So Michael Sussman, former Clinton campaign lawyer, is not guilty. Not guilty of lying to the FBI. And already we're seeing a lot of liberals say that the whole Russiagate hoax narrative is fake news because all of these journalists who wrote that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia, well, they got Pulitzers. That the convictions in the Russiagate investigation, well, they've all stood up to the test of time. But the Durham probe, nothing so far. Well, actually, what we learned in the investigation is that it's all basically true, that Hillary Clinton signed off on spreading bunk information to the media. And then this guy went to the FBI and misrepresented himself. At least that's what they claimed. And the jury said, well, they couldn't meet the burden. But many conservatives are saying, actually, the issue is twofold. One, it's a D.C. jury. Several of the jurors that were in the jury pool donated to Hillary Clinton. Now, we don't know if they actually made it to the jury because it was anonymous, but one even said they would try their best to be impartial. That's amazing. And, yeah, it's truly incredible.
They'll try.
The other issue is that Tom Fitton said, when you try to make the FBI the victims, no one's, well, you've got no case. The issue is that the FBI were co-conspirators. At least that's what he's arguing. I think ultimately anybody who thought there was going to be accountability, at least for now, in the Russiagate narrative. Surprise, surprise. I got to admit, it feels a little boring. You know, I was like, this is the big news. Everybody saw this coming. In fact, a lot of people I know who are deeply entrenched in politics were like, I haven't really been paying attention because this is exactly what we thought was going to happen. So we'll talk about that. We got a bunch of other crazy stories. There was a fire at a chicken factory, a fire at a chemical plant. Now, apparently the mainstream media says these fires are conspiracy theories. There's nothing here, nothing happening. But we'll talk about that. Gas prices once again at a new record. Ugh.
Yeah, also, so hold on.
Boring week. It's just like everything's worse. Yeah, we know.
I got a comment on this. They were arguing that it's not fake news because journalists won Pulitzers for reporting on it. Right. Is that their actual argument?
Well, they won awards. It's real news, right?
That is the evidence.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I've brought him up a number of times, but just look into Walter Durante,
Yeah,
the man
seriously.
who literally covered up millions of people being starved to death for the New York Times, and then won a Pulitzer Prize for it, which Pulitzer refused to revoke upon re-examining the case.
We're going to talk about all of this.
Thank you, Seamus.
And as many of you may have already noticed, we have Brandon Straka joining us.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
What's going on? Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm Brandon Straka. I created the Walkaway movement in 2018, and which really caught fire for a few years. And then, the clouds came in 2020, shortly after the election, and I had a pretty rough year for the last year and a half. I think we'll get into it tonight, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What up? But
Seamus
I'm really
is just
happy
not
to be
paying
here.
attention.
I'm
Seamus
just
is
not.
not
No,
here.
I wasn't sure
He's
if you
not
wanted to
here.
say
Yeah.
something to him or not. If you
I
had a
was turning
response
the
to
fan
that.
up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hot today.
It's
My
hot.
name is Seamus Coughlin.
That's right.
I have a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes, and I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if you guys know this, but I just launched a website,
go
freedomtunes.com. I want to plug. We're selling subscriptions, $5 a month. You'll help get us independent from big tech. You'll also get extra cartoons that the public doesn't get. One extra cartoon a week. We got a bunch of videos up there now. You guys will love it.
It's Freedom Tunes, Toons.
Yes, that's right. But if you spell it wrong, as many people do,
Does it
it'll
redirect?
still take you to the
Oh,
website.
Oh, that's
nice.
hardcore, dude.
Smart.
Metal.
Super smart.
Hey, everybody. Ian Crossland here from IanCrossland.net. Nothing to report yet, but man, am I looking forward to hanging out and talking tonight. Maybe talk about gun control or something.
Oh,
like that.
definitely, yeah. Ian was talking about how he thinks everybody should have high-powered siege weapons.
Yeah,
yes.
as I started to think about if you find yourself as a defender, which basically what these weapons are to defend our rights and our liberty, if you're being attacked, they will set up forward operating bases in entrenched positions, and you still are going to need to assault the attacker to get them out of the attack formation. So in that case...
I love right now that they're sharing this clip of me saying the Second Amendment protects your right to keep and bear arms, including nukes and biological weapons.
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't understand legal versus moral arguments. I'm like, I'm not saying people should have them. I'm saying the Second Amendment says arms, and that's never been changed, other than we've just kind of culturally and passively said okay to restrictions.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to get a nuke, right? But I digress.
Well, I have always kind of thought that people should be able to own anything that the military can own. That only seems fair to me, but I also digress. I'm also here in the corner pushing buttons. Happy to do it for these guys. Let's get going.
Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member. To help support our work as a member, you'll get access to exclusive segments from the Timcast IRL podcast. We're going to have one up for you. It'll be published around 11 or so p.m. You'll also be helping make sure we can maintain our infrastructure. We've got some conversations happening in the background about changes. We want to be supporting companies that are more resilient to big tech censorship. So we're trying to figure out how to implement these best. That will be coming soon. But don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's talk about this story here from the Post-Millennial. Trump slams corrupt legal system following acquittal of Michael Sussman. Our legal system is corrupt, Trump wrote. Right. So perhaps Trump will get reelected and then he'll start firing all of these people. We'll see. This is a story from CNN. Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer Michael Sussman was acquitted Tuesday of lying to the FBI in the first trial of special counsel John Durham's investigation. The verdict is a major defeat for Durham and his Justice Department prosecutors, who have spent 3 years looking for wrongdoing in the Trump-Russia probe. He claimed Sussman lied during a 2016 meeting in which he passed a tip to the FBI about Donald Trump and Russia. The D.C. federal jury deliberated for 6 hours over 2 days before reaching its verdict. The Sussman case revolved around his September 2016 meeting with James Baker, a friend who was the FBI's general counsel. Sussman passed along a tip that led to a 4-month FBI inquiry into a possible internet back channel between the Trump Organization and Kremlin-linked Alpha Bank. Both companies denied the claim, and the FBI didn't find any improper links. And we learned from testimony that Hillary Clinton signed off on it, that many high-powered, high-profile Democrats were deeply involved in this. The story was complete BS, but apparently the FBI already knew, so it was a waste of everyone's time. If this is all Durham has, I can't say I'm surprised, but maybe something else will happen. I would be surprised if there was any accountability. What I find fascinating is that you have people who spread a lie, which cost the federal government, what was it, 50 million, 35 million for the Mueller investigation.
So much.
This guy misrepresents who he's working with, claiming, I believe that what he was claiming, he wasn't working with any campaign, but he was working for the Clinton campaign. No problem. But what about Peter Navarro right now being subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury, threats of putting him in jail like Steve Bannon if they don't come and testify? I hate to say it. Double standard.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, look, it's not just that it was a waste of everyone's time. It was actually an attempted insurrection. The purpose was to remove a democratically elected president from the office the people of this nation decided he should have through the legal process.
It was a political insurrection attempt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think anyone involved in this, we should file some 14th Amendment lawsuits
Seriously.
about their eligibility to run for office.
Seriously. I mean, none of those people should still have a job. That is, I mean, it's unbelievably heinous. And of course, the media helped them along every single step of the way. I mentioned a poll on the show the other day when they polled Democratic voters. They found 50% of them believed Russia literally hacked voting machines in the United States and changed the votes. That's how paranoid people got over this.
In 2016, they thought that happened in 2016.
That's what they believed happened in the 2016 election. And no one got banned from big tech. No one was told that was a conspiracy theory they couldn't spread. No one had their life destroyed over it.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
They won awards
for it. It was promoted. They won awards for it.
Man.
Exactly. And so one thing I find a little bit interesting is that when the previous president was accused of some sort of election fraud, we investigated the president. When this president was accused of the same thing, we investigated the people accusing him.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And everybody was insane who believed that was any possibility whatsoever, that Joe Biden didn't get 81 million votes.
You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to question the narrative, the official news stories. But again, in 2016, I mean, you still have people saying these things online. And I've got some questions for Google and YouTube. You've got people on YouTube right now that will say that they believed the Russia narrative and all that stuff, but that's okay because the New York Times said so, right? So they're allowed to say that. But if you're a Trump supporter and you say something about 2020, you're gone.
You're allowed to question it, because for instance, Dominion, private company, tallying votes in private. We don't know what they did, and that's the problem in my eyes. I question, what did they do? But making claims about it is where things start to get tricky when it comes to social media administration.
Think about this. In the Trump fraud narrative, people were spreading this admittedly ridiculous story about servers in Germany and like a CIA shootout and all that stuff. And they were like, what's going on? And it's like, where did this stuff come from? And then you have Donald Trump running a secret server with a German bank because he was an asset of Vladimir Putin since the 1980s. And I'm like, dude, you actually had, I think it was Jonathan Chait, is his name, who said Donald Trump may be a Soviet asset. He said Donald Trump may have been a Russian asset since the 80s. And I'm like, that was the Soviet Union, dude. Like he's still a part of whatever's going on.
Yeah, him and Tulsi Gabbard.
And that was mainstream. That was MSNBC. That was New York Mag. Totally acceptable to say. And then a bunch of people with MAGA hats on said something equally as absurd. And they were like, wow, look at those crazy people. Look what they believe. I don't see how we hold this country together, man.
But I think it goes beyond elections too, because to your point about not being allowed to question something. I mean, they went so far with this as to name it. They call it the big lie, and anybody who questions this, they're questioning the big lie. And their whole point is that it's too dangerous and it's too destabilizing to allow people to question the election. Look what could happen to society if they do. Meanwhile, these are the same people who throughout the entire year of 2020 went on TV night after night after night telling black people that they're not safe to walk to their mailbox because a police officer will come and shoot them, encouraging every single night these riots that were happening all across the country. But that's not a big lie. We're not questioning that. There are FBI statistics that we can look at and see this is not a legitimate problem in this country the way it's being portrayed by the media. But that's fine to say every single night while people are getting killed and neighborhoods are burning to the ground.
This is why I often say that the two factions aren't really left or right. It's, do you believe the lie, the mainstream media, or do you challenge the mainstream media? Do you believe the official narrative, or do you question the official narrative? That's it. Earlier you asked me if I was a conservative yet, or something like that. You're like, are you conservative yet? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think it doesn't matter what your political positions are. It matters if you believe the lies.
Right. Yeah, but you're one of, I think, the most sort of high-profile transitioners that we've seen.
Transitioners?
Yeah, well, you've been transitioning.
He's been taking
I think, for several
testosterone
years.
to become more conservative.
But serious question, what issues have I changed on in the past 10 years?
I don't know about issues, but I know that my experience sort of following you was that you were sort of a well-known podcaster who tended to have what I think a lot of people thought were left-wing values. I became aware of you mostly because I had started Walkaway and people kept saying, Tim Pool's talking about Walkaway, Tim Pool's talking about Walkaway. And it seemed at the time, like when you were first talking about me, that you maybe didn't like me that much or what I was doing. Or you're just like, oh my God, like look what's happening in society. And that's why Brandon Straka and this Walkaway is taking off and stuff. And now you kind of seem like a Walkaway to me. And now, but Walkaway's not about becoming
definitely.
conservative. But
Right. Yeah, I supported Democrats in 2020 in the primary. Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang.
am I screaming?
Yeah, you're screaming.
Yeah.
No, you're good. You're fine.
Our ears are
Totally
bleeding
fine.
already.
That's too bad.
But I ended
so
up voting
loud.
for
I'll
Trump.
just turn you down.
So wait, did you say Tulsi?
But
Or-
Tulsi and Yang I supported in the
Okay,
primaries.
so the Russian assets, basically. Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Yang?
Unbelievable.
I don't know
No,
about-
I don't know about Yang. Tulsi was definitely called a Russian asset.
Oh, for
by
sure.
Hillary.
Isn't that nuts? They were like, no, we need a woman of color in this election, and then it's like we need Tulsi Gabbard off the stage. She's like a Hawaiian. Her skin is like
She's
mauve.
like,
I don't know
Indian,
what color
I
you
think.
would say.
She's like, they're like some people of color are more people of color than other people
That's
of
right.
color.
That's right.
Yeah, based on their opinions, of course.
Well, it was basically, they were grooming Tulsi Gabbard to be this big Democrat player, and then she turned on
Became
Hillary
honest.
Clinton,
Yeah.
supported Bernie Sanders, and then I'm just imagining, all of these top level Democrats like Debbie Wasserman Schultz faints. And then Hillary catches her and she's fanning her like, oh, Tulsi, what have you done? Oh. And then they were just like, she's out, get rid of her.
Yeah. Well, and she really let Kamala have it too in
Oh,
the
that was
debates.
amazing.
That was great.
That was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, ripped her. She shot
Those are the
back at
days.
Hillary pretty decently too.
Man,
They
that-
called her
Yeah.
queen of the warmongers.
That's right.
Fantastic.
That's wild.
That was 2019, right?
So
Yeah.
fun.
Wow.
Regarding walking away, Brandon, what you're saying, I do think of it as like walking away from believing the TV when I am told things. Like when Hillary's emails got leaked to WikiLeaks, and I started reading about her dealings with, Sidney Blumenthal and his company Osprey Global Solutions, moving him into Libya and wanting to set up an arms dealership in Libya, basically like gun running. That was like, it was hard to get people to believe it, and it was shocking that people didn't believe it, because it was in her emails to Sydney and her assistants and things like that. But at the same time, I could no longer tolerate it. I can't live a lie. So I had no choice but to walk away from that garbage, that consumptory garbage, trying to eat everything in its path. Seems like you were gonna say
I
No,
just
well-
think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if you know this, Ian, but one thing I learned from my television is if someone did something really bad and they get caught, if the person who caught them is bad, that means they didn't do the bad thing.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
That makes perfect
interesting.
sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Turns out it was a bunch of big bad Russians or something
Well,
like that, and then
I
also
learned-
it wasn't.
From my TV, that if a person does a bad thing, and the president questions the bad thing and asks for an investigation, it's actually the president who did the bad thing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's a fact.
And that's
That is a
always true,
natural
no matter
fact.
who the president is.
No, it just
come
depends on
on,
who the
come on,
president
calm
is.
down, calm
Yeah.
down.
If the president's name starts with a TRUMP and ends with TRUMP,
Got it.
always bad.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
the Ukraine stuff is the most mind warping, crazy. Like, you have a video of Joe Biden saying quid pro quo. Joe Biden literally on video laughing about he tried to halt U.S. congressionally approved aid to Ukraine unless he got a personal favor. And they were like, you can't do this. And he goes, call the president, see what he says. And then Trump was like, wow, that looks like a, something. What's up with that? And they were like, Trump did it. It's like imagine being in an elevator and then you fart and then tell the other guy that it was them. That's what they were doing.
Then you spend 3 years investigating.
No. Then
who farted? It was definitely him.
The elevator opens up and there's a crowd of people standing in front of it. And they go, oh, what was that? And you see Biden going, and they're like, it was clearly him. It's on video. And then, but wait, it was Trump. Trump was the one who did the bad thing after all. That's actually what they did. Joe Biden threatened the president of Ukraine with withholding approved aid unless they did him a personal favor.
Yes.
And but it was the policy of the United States at the time. It's like no. Look, Joe Biden didn't have the authority to supersede approved aid. That's what they said when Trump said that. Look into this. They said Trump has no right to block aid to Ukraine. It's like that's what he was saying Joe Biden was doing. So why are you not yelling about Joe Biden doing it? Because the media, it's all just, it's a puppet show, man.
But that's the ultimate gaslighting, what you're describing right now. And I think that if people on the left who are still subscribing to the left, like I used to before I walked away, could actually see it, they're so brazen about accusing other people of doing the exact things that they're actually doing. I mean, that is like the breadcrumb trail right there. If people could see it, like if the Democrats are accusing somebody of doing it, automatically they're doing it right now. Investigate. But the people don't see it.
You know why I don't call it the left is because in 2006 it was the Republicans. It was George Bush and Cheney. If you question the 9/11 narrative and the war in Iraq, you were like all of a sudden an outcast and a conspiracy theorist. And then it was like Bill Kristol, the war advisor. All of a sudden he's a Democrat now. He's with Hillary Clinton now.
Right? It's so weird.
So there's this war party that is like unaffiliated. And it's like they're the one making the media tell you the lies.
But that's a question that I actually wanted to ask all you guys when you were talking a second ago about like media narratives. I get asked this all the time as somebody who left the left and I ended up becoming a Republican. In my opinion, I used to hate Fox News as a liberal. I used to think Fox News was everything that they said was a lie and some sort of conspiracy theory and that they were doling out misinformation. Now, I've spent a lot of time watching Fox News over the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't feel that way anymore. I do believe that they are absolutely biased. I think they absolutely have a point of view that they're trying to push, but I don't see examples of them blatantly lying and creating misinformation and creating completely false stories. But I do see that from left-wing media all the time. So do you think it's equal? Because I get asked this question all the time. People are like, well, Fox News does that too. Do you think they do?
MSNBC is owned by Comcast, which is owned by BlackRock. I don't know how deep it goes on Fox's end. I think Fox, what is it? 20th Century Fox is owned by Disney at this point. What's Fox News owned by
Fox
Disney?
News is I think it's still News Corp, right?
I don't know how deep BlackRock has their tentacles in Fox.
Fox doesn't play, it's crazy that we're at this point where I was talking about this the other day. I used to watch CNN. I used to have it on all the time. And then one day it was just a Trump panel. And I was like, isn't something happening? And I turned on Fox News and they were like, riots erupt in Iran. And I was like, oh, wow. And I'm watching video footage of these riots. And then later there's like a big storm. And I turn on CNN and there's a panel talking about Trump. And then I change the channel and it's Fox. And they're like, prepare for the storm. Big storm's coming. Here's what people are saying. And I was just like, CNN is not news. You know what I think? Jeff Zucker was a reality TV guy. And so he approached CNN. Actually, let me stop before saying CNN. I'll tell you exactly what I experienced with Fusion. This was the ABC News Univision joint venture. I leave Vice, I join Fusion, and for the first 6 to 8 months, they were like, "We're going to do news." They had a show about drug cartels and like federal agents and Mexican federal agents going after them. And then one day they were just like, "We're changing things up." They hired a new editor-in-chief whose Twitter profile was down with whiteness. And he's like a white guy, and it was a black fist. And I was told that they were shifting into mission-driven storytelling. And then I was told that because young people are progressive, that's what they're going after. They want to target young people, and young people are progressive, so that's the narrative that they're pursuing. So all of a sudden, there was this shift where it was like, tell the truth to side with the audience. Tell them what they want to hear.
Right.
And that's what happened. There you go.
It's like
and
a
that was
junkie feeding an
2014.
addict.
Right. The idea, I think, and then CNN obviously adopts a similar.
A dealer.
Right. The CNN and all these media outlets adopted the exact same thing. They, look at this show. we're not the most tribal show, but there's tribalism entrenched in what we do, of course, because everybody has got a perspective. We're clearly in the right-wing sphere of influence, whatever you want to call it, including libertarians, conservatives, and post-liberals. We have direct disagreements with establishment media, establishment personalities, and the leftists who outright support them. So that's there. But if you take a look at the prominent right-wing voices, they're like middle of the road. If you take a look at the left, they're hard left, pro-establishment.
Right.
So when you have the left claiming, and I mean the legit left, the socialists, Joe Biden's bad, we can't support him. We all voted for him, and we think you should vote for him too. Like, that was the funniest thing, watching these socialists be like, we don't like Joe Biden, but you have to vote for him. And I was like, this dude is the epitome. He's like Goldman Sachs, big banker, elite, corporate, neocon, neolib. For what reason would any leftist support that? I guess because they're fascists or whatever.
No, they don't have principles. They literally do
Right.
not have principles. What's most important to them is trying to establish a specific social order, and however they have to get their hands dirty along the way, they're willing to, as long as they end up getting the pieces in the right place eventually.
And this is interesting because you asked me before the show if I was conservative now, and talking about walking away. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think the issue is just, as I mentioned a moment ago, if you believe the lies or not, if you trust the narrative from the establishment or you question it, is what really separates the spheres of influence.
Yeah.
So when you see, we did this thing with ground.news. You can look up someone's news consumption bias. Invariably, you pull up a left-wing personality and it'll say all of like 80 or 90% of their news consumption is left-wing sources. You pull up people like, Michael Malice or me, and it says a balance of left, right, and center. Mine, I think, is 55% left-wing sources, then like 20% center, and the rest is right.
I think mine was 30 or 35.
But then a lot of conservative personalities are like 60% conservative, and then like 15 and 15 of centrist or left-wing. But they have way more left-wing news in their diet than the left has the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see that. Then what happens is we bring someone on the show, this like former conservative guy, and he outright told me the Joe Biden quid pro quo thing didn't happen. I was like, so you get Joe Biden saying, SOB, the guy got fired. And he goes, that didn't happen. And he like smirks. And I was like,
he said he couldn't let that stand or something.
yeah,
like that. It was
that's
even
right.
Further than that.
Like, I can't let that stand. That didn't happen. And I was like, yes, it did. And he's like, no, it didn't. I was like, okay. And I pulled the video up and I'm like, here's a video, watch it. And he was like, oh. I'm like, and? Like, are you serious? You didn't Google it? You just heard it and you thought it was true? That's the thing, man. The Covington kid stuff, I don't just believe it. People are like, you got to see this, man. People on the right were critical of them. And I was like, well, what happened? And we have a lot of that going on right now. Like, there was that story of that young girl in the school who was sexually assaulted in Loudoun County. And everyone on the right is just saying it was a trans person. And I'm like, that was never part of the story. They just started saying that. And I'm like, if you actually look it up, the kid never said they were trans. At least that's my understanding, having read the story. I was like, if someone says something happened, I don't care if on the left or the right, I'm going to read it. It turns out reality has a conservative bias. At least in my investigation, in my doing of journalism and fact checking, that's what I found. The left lies about everything. Should we do the list again?
Yeah.
Russiagate, Ukrainegate, Jussie Smollett, Michael Brown, Ahmaud Arbery. What are we missing? Trayvon Martin. Wow, the media George Floyd, the media.
Charlottesville.
Oh yeah, Joe Biden's whole campaign.
Oh yeah.
Lies nonstop.
Yeah.
And then the left tries to talk about the Republicans, and I'm like, yeah, who's praising Mitch McConnell right now?
Right.
I don't know anybody who's actively in politics who's like, that's a great guy. I'm a big fan of him. But what is he even saying in terms of facts? Nothing. So I don't consider myself a conservative. I consider myself someone who is interested in what's true and what's real.
You said something earlier that's interesting, because I think a lot of people, a problem they're having is when they hear something that they don't necessarily want to believe, they just immediately say, that's not real. No. But a strong mind is capable of tending an idea without believing it or disbelieving it, just allowing it to exist and considering it.
Well, what you just described is literally the experience that I had that created the sort of epiphany. That created sort of the epiphany for me that began the journey of me walking away, because it's not to bore anybody
Please
who's
tell
heard
me,
this.
tell me.
Okay. After Trump got elected, I had voted for Hillary. I was devastated, and I was really acting out about it. I was really angry, and one of the things that I said was in January of 2017. So it was around the time he was about to take office. I went on Facebook and I blasted conservatives in this post where I just said, I'll never be able to understand how anyone could vote for a man who was capable of standing before a cheering crowd and mocking a reporter's disability. Do you remember that one? Yeah. And that's when somebody that I knew, she was my babysitter when I was a kid, this woman, Diane, she was always a conservative, but she reached out to me privately on Facebook with this video called Debunking that Trump Mocked the Disabled Reporter. And she was like, I'm just wondering, have you seen this? I'm not trying to start a fight with you. But I remember my instinct when I just reading the title of the video, I was so enraged that anyone would try to debunk that he did that, because I was like, but I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. I know he did it. CNN told me he did it. And then I decided to watch the video because I thought to myself, well, it's going to be really clear that this is like right-wing propaganda and Fox News brainwashing, so then I can tell her how stupid she is for falling for it. And I watched it, and it was like I almost dissociated from my body because my brain was like screaming at me like, oh my God, I don't think he mocked that reporter's disability. But my heart was like going, yeah, but we hate him, but we hate him, but we hate him. And I had to watch it 4 times before I could reconcile within myself that I was wrong. But then it took me at least another week or 2 before I was able to go back to Diane, that woman, and be like, okay, I may be changing my mind about this one thing, not about Trump, but about this one incident. But that set me down the road of trying to figure out what was going on with the media.
And I just want to make a point here. I remember that story as well, and when I heard it, I didn't look too deeply into it. I thought maybe, I think it's horrible if he said something like that. Of course, it turned out to be fake news because basically everything they say turns out to be fake news. But even so, even if he had done something as horrible as mock somebody with a disability, because of Hillary Clinton, there are slave markets back in Libya. She completely decimated a country. And I'm sorry, but that's worse. That is so much worse. Even if Trump actually did it, which he didn't, it is worse to destroy an entire country to the point where slavery has returned to the region.
So I didn't vote in 2016 because I was just like, are you kidding me? Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I heard what Trump was saying, but I was like, please, I've heard this all before. It's the back and forth nonsense. But I did think it'd be real hilarious if Trump ended up winning just because it's Trump. And then when Hillary lost, it was just so hilarious. But when it came to Joe Biden versus Trump, I was flabbergasted at the leftists who were like, we're going to vote for Joe Biden. And I was like, Joe Biden was the vice president under Barack Obama. The National Defense Authorization Act, indefinite detention provisions, expansion of the war in the Middle East, expansion of drone strikes, the bombing of civilians, and then saying, oh, but they're military-age males, the extrajudicial assassination of American citizens. And I was like, you screamed that George W. Bush was Hitler. And now you've got the vice president of a guy who killed American citizens without charge or trial. I'm voting for Trump because what? He was no new wars. There were more drone strikes as we were pulling troops. I was like, okay, look, Trump's not that bad, right? I was like, I hear all the complaints the left makes about him. I think his attitude, his character was like unbecoming of a presidential office. All of that stuff matters to a lot of people. Decorum does matter. But for me, I'm like, it matters relatively little compared to a booming economy in 2019. I don't blame him for COVID. I don't blame Joe Biden for COVID. But then looking at Joe Biden in the election, and I was like, if that guy gets elected, we'll be right back in Syria. We're gonna have new war. Mark my words, it is gonna get worse. And Donald Trump had some good second-term policy positions. So I said, okay, what do we get? Wow, man. I want to make sure everybody hears this. When you go to the gas pump and you see that little Joe Biden that says, I did that, that's not a joke. Joe Biden shut down Keystone. Joe Biden introduced new regulations on gas. He banned, he put a freeze on oil and gases on federal land. There's a lot he's done. We had that video from Hawley where he goes through all of the policies. And you know why Joe Biden did it? Climate change. Yep. Now, I'm not making a moral statement on climate change. I think pollution and all this stuff is really, really bad. I think there are issues with these massive population centers overpopulating or polluting. But if you are wondering why your gas prices are high, it is because the people who are scared about climate change are enacting policies specifically because of climate change. They are saying they are doing it, and it's causing economic crises. If you're cool with that because you think climate change is bad, well, just admit it. That's fine. I'm not issuing a moral statement. But Joe Biden literally did this because of climate change. And now we've got reports that farms are being paid not to farm. They're being paid to build solar farms instead. Yep. I mean, it's very obvious what they're doing, just not telling people. But that's the reason. If you're a climate change activist, be proud. Those high gas prices mean less people will drive and lower carbon emissions. And if you're a middle American working class person who's struggling to pay your bills, that's why it's happening.
But do you feel like your words will resonate with these people? I mean, this kind of goes back to the conversation you and I were having before the show. I mean, like, if Trump were to run again, are enough people getting it that it actually would make a difference? Because I actually believe that a lot of people on the left are willing to pay $6 a gallon for gas or more if they believe that we don't have Hitler in office again.
Well, I just want to say this. I mean, your former babysitter had faith that she could reach you.
Right.
And it worked, right?
It worked when I was faced with the realization that something that here's the thing. I learned that my feelings were being manipulated by the people that I trusted. I trusted CNN. I thought that they were honest, and I hated people like Donald Trump, and I hated people like Republicans because I thought that they were bad people. I thought they were people that did things like make fun of disabled people, and everyone laughs and cheers. But as it turns out, to me, I say this all the time, and as a gay person, I always say this, like, the left will pretend like they're the people that care about black people and brown people and LGBT people and all this stuff. But the thing is, they're actually lying and manipulating and exploiting all of these people to get them to think the way they want them to think and behave and vote the way that they want them to vote. I will, any day of the week, take the enemy that will look into my eyes and say, I don't like gay people. I'll never be down with you. I don't like you. Then the person who says, no, I'm your friend. I'm on your side. I'm here to protect you. But they're actually lying to me and manipulating me. And that's what I discovered through that experience.
I want to answer what he's asking. But put a tag in that.
Yeah.
What I want to say is, are people getting the message? It depends on how you all at home are delivering the message. If you have someone who is deep blue, vote blue no matter who, going to them and being like, it's your fault that gas prices are so high because Joe Biden and these climate, not going to work. You can do two things. Me, I prefer the middle of the road, straightforward approach where when I'm talking with someone who I know might not agree, I'll just be like, man, you see those gas prices? And they'll go, yeah, dude. I'll be like, that's crazy. What is it? It's like $6 in Pennsylvania. Jeez. It's like almost upwards of $8 in some parts of California. But hey, man, look, what we're seeing, Joe Biden, he wants to fight climate change. So they want to shut down Keystone Pipeline because they don't want the oil moving through, and then you get speculation, which drives prices. I mean, Russia and all that stuff plays a role, but these prices were skyrocketing before that. So, look, I mean, if you guys want to be serious about climate change, this is what happens. That is an effective message. They might say, yeah, I get it. It's bad, and I'm suffering because of it. Or you can do the even more manipulative, which is, you see gas prices? $8 a gallon in California? Bro, high five. You know what this means? It means no one's driving. Good. They shouldn't be driving anyway if they can't afford electric cars.
That's right.
These people think, I can come out and talk about climate change, but they do nothing. They keep eating, they keep guzzling, they keep flushing their toilets. They take half-an-hour showers during droughts. Good. I hope they cry every time they see that $8 per gallon price. And that's Joe Biden who did that. Joe Biden sent a strong message to these American gluttons who are burning through carbon every single day. We will end climate change, mark my words, and Joe Biden will do it. And then regular people are going to be like, that was psychotic.
That's what you say in the intersection before you drive up in your Tesla to the guy next to you.
Exactly. So that's the more manipulative approach where you make someone be like, that's a crazy position. I don't want gas prices this high. I'm not a fan of that, but that is, it's
one way to go.
Sometimes you have to go there.
It's like black propaganda. It's like shocking someone with, what's going on. But I mean, I got to be honest, you don't even need to do that because maybe just show them a video of someone, at like the DSA convention where they were like, my name's John, he, him. Can people stop clicking their pens because it's driving my anxiety? And then someone gets up and goes, stop saying guys. And then they're all yelling. I'm like, just show them that video. But in all reality, the way to effectively give someone the message is just to be polite about it and say, Joe Biden said he wanted to fight climate change. So he passed some regulations that caused hiccups in the energy sector. He's not responsible for all of the escalation of gas prices, but he played a big role. I mean, a year before he came in office, gas was at like $2. Now it's at like $4 to $5. So, I mean, that's obvious that climate change policy.
I also kind of stopped playing the game of trying to change people's minds in one conversation and play more of the chipping away with just honesty and kindness and listening to them because they'll they're probably not completely wrong about everything anyway. So
Yeah.
it's nice to hear.
No, that's a good point. Well, no, I mean, there's an old saying, in every heresy, there's a kernel of truth. I mean, people believe things because there is like some shred of goodness there that they're trying to scrape at. And if you can figure out what that little kernel of goodness is, you can show them the truth and how it really fully embodies that. I'm not saying it always works, but I am saying I agree with what Ian is saying, that there is something there about like trying to figure. Now, obviously, we have people in this culture who are like completely bad faith actors or totally morally depraved. But I'm saying like someone you might meet in your everyday life who could be persuadable.
So
Yeah.
I think it's the left and not the right. Right? This is just reality. The right has post-liberals. These are people who are the walkaway people.
Yeah.
They're still very politically liberal on a lot of issues, but they have aligned themselves now with Republicans. Pew Research showed that, what do they call, the stressed sideliners lean right on political issues. And it's probably because the left keeps moving further and further left, like that Elon Musk meme. So when you see, there's one thing right now about me, because I'm staunch 2A. People are wondering what position I've changed on. I went from, I think guns are cool. Maybe we can have some, simple gun reforms that might make everybody happy, to not all guns, like guns are legal. 2A, if you got a problem with it, you got to change the Constitution. So I said on an episode that the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear nuclear arms and biological arms. But I'm not wrong. Now, just because Second Amendment protects it doesn't mean it's legal, you can do it, or you should be able to do it. So they take a clip of me, cut out the context where I'm like, people have the right to have nukes. And Ian's like, and biological weapons? I'm like, absolutely. And then they cut out the part where I'm like, that doesn't mean they should. It means that when the Second Amendment was codified in the Constitution, people had warships that could flatten coastal cities. And the Founding Fathers knew that and were like, you can have it. The right to keep and bear arms. And so there's a lot of sophistry in the Second Amendment argument where they say like, but a well-regulated militia. That has nothing to do with what the actual prescription of the Second Amendment is. They're saying because of this need, the people have a right to keep and bear arms. And arms means arms. Does it say except nuclear in the Second Amendment? It doesn't. Should it? Perhaps it should. And that's something we will need to change. But that's something I've changed on for sure. Now, what happens is, in this whole issue, they're sharing that clip out of context, and then they create fake context around it.
Yeah.
And so after they post that clip, the morsel of truth Seamus mentioned, they then will add something like, and after this, Tim said this, which I didn't say. And then people believe it because they saw a video and then saw someone telling them the story. Someone will say, Tim Pool thinks everyone should have a nuclear weapon because he wants humanity to be wiped out. Here's the video. Here's proof. Wow. And then people go, wow. Then they say, Tim Pool also claims that China manufactured COVID to wipe out white people or something like that, which is like something they're actually trying to claim. And these are high-profile left-wing accounts. That's why I say when you look at the right, the reality has a conservative bias, at least for now. Maybe it'll change in 10 years.
What do you mean? What does that mean exactly? Reality?
It means, so Stephen Colbert had the famous quote, reality has a liberal bias. And what the point he was making, I guess, was that the liberal media, as conservatives call it, tends to be true and they're fake news. Therefore, reality must have a liberal bias. The reality is today, if you're talking to a conservative personality, Ben Shapiro, great example. If you listen to Ben Shapiro, you are 99% of the time going to hear the absolute truth. To the best of his ability. I don't mean like the dude is omniscient, but he's going to be like, we got a new report coming out from the New York Times that says,
we have a new report from the New York Times, right? This is what it says, folks. This is why they're absolutely wrong.
But he will tell you what they're saying.
Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks will just say nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you watch his show, this is why, you watch the Young Turks, they'll just say things that are plumb not true. Or they'll just make dramatic, personalized, like personal arguments that have nothing to do with the issues. Ben Shapiro, he told us, he's like, I don't debate people, I have discussions with them, but they're, the left will constantly be arguing. So what do? The video that goes viral of Ben Shapiro is some kid being like, well, you can't please your wife. And then the left is like, oh, and they'll high five each other. And I'm like, okay, why would anyone want to be associated with that? And what does that have to do with the principled arguments we're having? Thus, you talk to someone on the right, you'll end up hearing closer to the truth than the left.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's only because this liberal economic order has its fangs in the neck of the American citizen.
I want to talk about walking away. We have this story from AP. Some Democrats voting in GOP primaries to block Trump picks. They go on to say, Diane Murray struggled with her decision all the way up to the election day. But when the time came, the 54-year-old, can we pull this up?
Yeah, sorry.
The 54-year-old Georgia Democrat cast a ballot in last week's Republican primary for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. While state law allowed her to participate in either party's primary, she said it felt like a violation of her core values to vote for the Republican, but it had to be done. She decided to prevent Donald Trump-backed election denier from becoming the battleground state election chief. Quote, I feel strongly that our democracy is at risk and that people who are holding up the big lie, as we call it, are holding onto the former president are dangerous to our democracy. Okay, blah, 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 blah. There was data that came out that showed in Georgia 7% of the Republican primary votes were former Democrats. And the media then came out and started saying things like this. Oh, this is Democrats trying to sabotage Trump. And I'm like, that's a really bad thing to say, even if it's true, that the will of the people is being subverted by people who are trying to sabotage a primary. But I don't believe it's true.
You don't?
I don't believe that 7%, we're talking about 100,000 people, were all like, we're Democrats, but we're going to vote the Republican race to ruin Trump's chances.
Is it bad that I absolutely believe it?
You do believe that 100,000 people who voted did it because they hate Trump?
I believe it's possible.
I didn't say it's not possible.
Yeah.
I believe that it is just extremely unlikely. And the reality is, it's people who are like, the economy is in the gutter. There's a food shortage, a fuel shortage, and I'm paying $5 a gallon for gas. I'm voting Republican.
Yep.
Well, look, I mean, money talks, and it speaks much more eloquently and effectively than any rhetoric. People have to throw, $6 into the pump to get a gallon of gas? Yeah, they're probably not going to vote for more of the same.
To your point, though, it would be foolish of any Republican, conservative, right-wing, whatever you want to call it, to ignore this story.
100%.
Because rest assured, it may come election time and you're like, we got it in the bag. Look at the turnout from the Republican primaries, record breaking. And then all of a sudden there's a surge in Democrat votes because they really were trying to sabotage you.
I think it's absolutely possible that this is an organized effort to get in and sabotage things. I do think it can happen in the numbers that you just described. I think when you said earlier that these people have no principles, this could absolutely be an example of just that. But wait, hold on. My question for you is, I understand the state of the country and the price of gas and inflation and everything pushing people over to the right, or even making the decision, oh my God, I'm going to vote Republican even though I've never done that in my entire life. But to switch parties and vote in primaries, I'm not so sure.
That's a good point. But I think maybe a lot of people just don't understand what the primaries are. But I do think it's a good point. But I will say this. In 2018, about 600,000 people voted in the Republican primary. In the primary in 2022, it was 1.1 million. They estimated only about 7% were former Democrats. This means that the Republicans are just seeing a surge in new voters. That says a lot. So I wonder.
Sorry. Who wants these new voters if they're if you still just hate Trump? Okay, so it's I still hate Trump as much as I ever did, but I hate how expensive gas is. So I'm going to become a Republican and vote against any of the pro-Trump people. You're not a Republican.
Right. They're not.
Right.
They don't know. So look, we're politicos, right? We're deeply entrenched in all this stuff. The regular person is probably sitting in their living room and they're just like, they come home from work and they see their wife and she's like, how was work? And it's like, honey, man, I don't know how we're going to budget for this. I mean, I had to put $70 in the gas tank to get to work. We're not making enough money. That's just this Biden, these Democrats. It's like, well, I'm voting Republican. They don't know what the primaries are, what they mean for the most part. They just know they get the thing in the mail saying, go vote. And they're like, I'm voting Republican.
But if this woman represents some sort of like key demographic of these people, can we show the quote again, what she said?
Yeah.
She said,
I feel strongly that our democracy is at risk and that people who are holding up the big lie, as we call it, are holding onto the former president are dangerous to democracy.
That is not just somebody who's like, I don't know how to budget for the month and I don't really follow politics.
Right, but this is one person.
Right, but I'm just saying if she is representative of the mentality of a lot of these people making this choice.
So here's what they're saying. They're saying an AP analysis of early voting from data from L2 found that more than 37,000 people who voted in Georgia's Democrat primary 2 years ago cast ballots in last week's Republican primary, an unusually high number of so-called crossover voters, even taking into account the limited sample of early votes. I just got to say, in the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be the correct one. And what we have seen, I mean, I remember back in, it was like 2019 or 2020, we had this C-SPAN video where people were just calling, being like, I have voted Democrat for 20 years and I am sick to my stomach of this. I'm voting Republican. We had these huge stories. I mean, you're Mr. Walkaway. How many people have you met who walked away? We had 9 million people in 2016 switch from Democrat to Republican.
Right.
The simple solution is most people are just voting Republican because they're sick of the Democratic Party.
Well, I can tell you that in the testimonials that we had before Facebook banned our group in 2021, the videos and the written testimonials were all people saying that they had an awakening that I'd say the key thing that most people had in common was an awakening that they were being lied to, manipulated, and exploited, and that awakening led them to see that they understood why Trump was a salvation to a lot of people, and they even considered, they said, I'm going to vote for Trump. So it wasn't like, I'm going to go, hold my nose and vote for Trump this time, or I'm becoming a Republican, but I'm just not going to vote for the president. They were enthusiastic about Trump, all of these people the majority of these people walking away. It wasn't this woman.
Right, it's a good point, that why are they voting in the primary?
I think part of the reason they liked him so much is because, in a sense, they're getting out of an abusive relationship with a really terrible ex, and he's talking smack to him all the time. And they're like, you know what? I kind of like this guy.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Ian? Do you think these are Democrats sabotaging? Do you think it's genuine?
Yeah, there's probably some people that are going to sign up for the other party to try and sabotage it, but I think a lot of people are disenfranchised with the Democratic Party. Biden's near demented at this state. It's really hard to watch him. Yeah, I'm very gracious about coming out and being like, dementia, Alzheimer's, like, I'm not a doctor. So, but it seems that way. And the Hillary Clinton email thing was insane. The way Bernie Sanders got screwed over two elections in a row, cycles in a row.
Let me ask you this way, Ian. If I made you an offer, a wager, as it were, for $1, you could bet that Biden is either suffering from severe dementia or he's not. And if you are right, you would win $1,000. Which one would you bet? Like,
dementia.
Wait. I should probably put it the other way around. What I'm trying to say.
Lines are fading.
My point,
I
suppose,
love the man. I want to help him.
If you had to wager $1,000 and you could win $1,000, which one are you going to bet on?
You give me 1,000 to 1 odds, whatever. You could bet me $1 for $1. I'd still say he has dementia. I don't know.
That's my
but
point.
That's my guess. He shuffles his feet and looks at the ground when he walks.
No one is going to risk any amount of money,
except for our entire economy.
Dude,
I guess 80 million people.
Listen to him do a video 10 years ago and then put on a video from 10 weeks ago. And it's like two different people. It's terrifying
That's true.
that he's in charge of the military.
That's true.
But Seamus, a lot of people in 2020, we had COVID lockdown. It was bad for a lot of people, and they said we need change. This was Trump's leadership. They probably thought it's going to be like Obama all over again. Those years, oh man, they're remembering being in college or back in the good old days. And I was like, I remember we used to go to the bar and play Wii Sports. And they're like, I got to vote for Joe Biden and bring back the Obama era. And now what have they gotten?
Flip phones. Vote for Obama. Yeah. Remember that
Now
Tara
look where
Reid
they are.
story? I was trying to talk to my mother about the Tara Reid story because she didn't really know it. Had been getting a lot of info from CNN, and it's like, no, well, this girl, I don't know, credibly accused. That's a funny buzzword, credibly. But she was like, he pushed me up against the wall in the middle of the building, Capitol building, wherever they were at.
And he did unspeakable things.
Yes, horrific.
Yeah.
And she worked for him. She was like one of his aides, and like that just got pushed under the rug.
Totally pushed under the rug.
I'm lifting the rug up so you can look at it. Tara Reid, look at her name. It's Reade, by the way.
Joe Biden sniffs little girls. Like, this
He
is not
actually
even up for
sniffs
debate.
children,
There's
and he does
videos of
it.
him doing it.
And they don't talk about it. Isn't that so bizarre that that's just not even discussed?
Can
Like,
I
the man
just-
has dementia and he sniffs children constantly. It's not
Oh,
like a
weird.
one-off thing. I think here's the thing. Now, I know you guys are going to call me crazy and maybe, I thought conservatives were against cancel culture. I can't believe he's about to say this. I think if you sniff one child in public once, your career should be over. Joe Biden has repeatedly sniffed children.
For
It is
decades.
a pattern, and it is
That's
constant.
The first time he did it, they should have walked him off stage and says, let's not do that again.
It's like, all
When
right.
regarding his leg hair being touched by the kids
my
in the
gosh.
pool that he was telling us about,
I got hairy legs.
I think maybe that it was like the kids were like, it's a sea monster, because the hair was real long, and he was like, the grandkids are. So probably not insidious.
I love when the media runs these stories where they're like, conservatives believe in conspiracy theories about a cabal of pedos and all that. And I'm like, listen. I think those conspiracy theories are pretty nuts, but it's not helping your case that Joe Biden is sniffing children on stage in front of the press.
And you're angry at bills that want to prevent sexual education for kindergartners through third grade. You're like, oh no, this is the hill we want to die on.
And not just
Okay.
that, bills that say you can't have secret conversations with children about sex that you tell them not to report to their parents.
The media
Right.
just says it's not happening.
I'm
Yeah,
the
it's
only
not
adult
happening.
you need to trust.
Well, that's the other thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not just that these things are happening. It's that the media is either pretending they're not happening, or when they do talk about it, they try to completely twist the story and gaslight you into believing that you're the crazy one for being against these unspeakable
Don't
things.
say gay. Don't
We
say
gotta.
gay.
We have, that song "Institutionalized" by Suicidal Tendencies. I'm not crazy. Institution.
Yeah.
We need to make a modern version of that, a cover. What's about the media? And it's like, I turn on the TV, I turn on CNN, you know, I'm like trying to figure out what's going on in the world. And they tell me, you know, Joe Biden didn't collude with the Ukrainian president to protect his son's business. And I'm like, yo, but there's video of him saying it. And they're just like, and then my mom comes in. You know that song? You ever see it?
So
The song's great.
It's funny. One thing I used to
It's a good
do. I was doing a cartoon a while ago about the scandal with old Joe Biden withholding funds from Ukraine so that they would do his bidding, basically, and back off the investigation into the company his son was working for.
Burisma.
But yeah, Burisma. And I was like, well, you know what? It's always good to get the other perspective. I don't want to spread misinformation if I'm wrong about this. So I looked up to see what like the fact checkers were saying, because usually what they'll do is gather all of what the left perceives to be as the strongest arguments against a conservative statement or position. And I'm not kidding you. The fact check I read said, well, it was actually Obama administration policy. So it's mostly false to say that Joe Biden was doing this for his own goals or his own motives. It's like, what?
Wow.
He's the vice president of the administration.
That's
They
not
said that
better.
it was Obama's administration's policy to go blackmail the Ukrainian government.
Basically, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to
You
see
know,
that
you know, I was
fact check.
thinking,
That's interesting.
imagine this.
It's a while ago.
Imagine anybody
Hold on.
willing to vote for Joe Biden at this point. That means they're like, well, the economy is in the gutter. Gas prices have shattered records consistently. Inflation is shattering records consistently. He sniffs children, and they want to take away our right to keep and bear arms. Like, he is the epitome of a fascist and who's just destroying everything. And they would prefer that. For what reason?
But you just like very matter-of-factly listed all of those things, and it's like, that is insane. That is actually what is happening. Like, that is the president of the United States right now.
I got the feeling that people were so angry. I don't know if angry is the right word, but so disillusioned or didn't like Trump so much. They're like, I will vote for poop over that guy. You give me a steaming pile of poop and I will vote for it. But I don't know if that's because they're like diluted on like psychoactive pharmaceuticals and they don't feel like they don't understand. Maybe they're just low IQ. Maybe people just aren't as smart as I'm giving them credit for, and they're voting with their gut instead of their logic.
The average person, you mean? Like, what
Yeah.
you're talking about, the people who voted? Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, so like Time Magazine came out and published an article where they basically admitted that in every single way they possibly could legally, they orchestrated the election to ensure that they would get a specific outcome. And we live in a culture where people have been consistently trained to always take the path of least resistance and do whatever brings them pleasure as opposed to what makes sense. And what that results in is people who are just followers and will basically do whatever the media tells them, get upset about the issues the media tells them to be upset about, and vote for the people the media tells them to vote for.
I want to pull up this tweet from Michael Malice. He said, no one wants to take away your guns. No one wants to shut down your business. No one wants lockdowns to continue more than necessary. No one is going to force you to have a vaccine passport. No one is teaching your kids critical race theory. These are all just conspiracy theories.
That's right. Don't be a conspiracy
Nobody wants to
theorist.
indoctrinate your children.
That's right.
Nobody, yeah.
Yeah, that's never happened before.
That's crazy. Yeah.
They don't have kids. They have yours.
I like
right.
that he said they don't. It's not. What does he say? No one is going to. Before all those statements. Well said.
No one
Michael.
wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to. Fill this in.
They
I
didn't
said
want
that-
to. You made them do
That's
it.
right.
I used to joke with my buddy Matt, and we'd be like, "It's not that I hate you. It's not that you're an idiot. That's not what I'm saying. You get it? Like you started off with, it's not that, and then you just say what you feel.
Yeah.
So
You're not an idiot, by the way. I love
So
you.
Brandon, I want to talk to you though.
Okay.
You walked away. You voted for Trump.
Yes.
Will you still vote for Trump?
Well, I want to, keep my options open for whatever
Ron
is coming
DeSantis,
down
maybe.
I'm a big Ron DeSantis fan. Big
So
Ron DeSantis
let's
fan.
pull this up real quick. We have this from Timcast.com. Trump and DeSantis are now tied as 2024 frontrunners on Predict It. So Predict It, of course, is people can buy shares essentially in who they think they're going to win. Well, what do you think? First, you want to keep your options open. You said.
Well, all I mean is that I want to. He has to announce. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is he going to announce or not? I mean, I think that most people think that he is.
Definitely.
So, I mean, if he announces and if he announces, I don't think that anyone can take him. Nor do I think that Ron DeSantis will even run if he announces. So in that scenario, definitely.
Would you vote for him if he runs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you vote for him even if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue?
It's a real question.
Probably. Yeah. Honestly, I mean,
Got him.
but I think that a lot of people are very excited about DeSantis right now. I definitely think I don't like a lot of what I'm seeing on the Trump side in terms of the devotion. Like, I get it when he was in office. I even get it when he was running because he was so different. I think that he got it. He understood the concerns of the American people at a time when people feel like America's being sold out and they needed a hero. And I think that he was that hero, for a really long time. But at this point, because people, I think, are so desperate about how the 2020 election went and how things currently are in this country, there are factions within the Trump community that are becoming cultish. And you're not
Dark
allowed.
MAGA.
You're not allowed to criticize him. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to express a disfavorable opinion about anything that he does. And then, okay, now we are becoming the thing that the left has said, if that's what it's going to be. I don't want to be. I will not be a part of a cult. So if I'm not allowed to criticize Trump, or if I'm not allowed to question decisions that he makes, like endorsing Dr. Oz, or okay, yeah, but if I'm not allowed to say that, then I am out. Because I'm not going to be a part of that culture.
No, but you can still vote for Trump. Look.
Yeah, I will. But there's a difference between going in and voting for him and being really outspoken and endorsing. And I think that I influenced a lot of people to come around to him in 2020.
For sure. The hardcore Trump supporters really do not like me because I won't support Trump's narrative on the election fraud stuff because I just think look, I think the issue is you need to discuss what happened in 2020 in a methodical way. The problem is a lot of people push these extreme stories about, servers in Germany and watermarked ballots. I look forward to sitting down with former President Trump because we're planning on, getting an interview with him. Hopefully, no guarantees. It'd be an honor and a privilege. But I would like to ask him, Mr. President, did you watermark any ballots? And when he says no, I'll be like, okay. See, this is the issue that YouTube is banning people for. They're banning people for those wild stories about secret behind-the-scenes missions. And what needs to be expressed is that Time magazine ran an article saying the shadow campaign to fortify the election or to save the election. And you talk about how rules were changed, about election laws, about universal mail-in voting, and the process that took over a year that resulted in a defeat. So Donald Trump can come out and say all of these things, but if he says it in a way where he's talking about those things, then you've got no problem. The issue is there's a lot of people who want to believe the craziest scenarios because they can't admit that people were willing to vote for Joe Biden destroying this country because they hated Trump so much. And I think that's what happened. I think there's obvious BS that we saw. We saw videos. There's Bill Barr said there was fraud, but just not enough of it. I think we saw unconstitutional voting rules. This literally happened in Pennsylvania where a judge ruled the voting law change was unconstitutional, but only after the fact.
Right.
Those things that happened. Okay, like that. You focus on that stuff, and you stay away from the more conspiratorial stuff. Now, my point here: most people are referring to that stuff and not the weird conspiracy stuff.
Right.
YouTube will conflate all of it, and the media will conflate all of it, so that when you're trying to talk to people, they don't understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's like psychological surgery where if you make a mistake, the patient will die. And that's how the censors are treating this conversation. You have to be extremely, accurate and, I don't know, there's other words for it, but direct and focused and intentional when you're communicating about this election fraud in general. I mean, it's a huge conversation. It's an important conversation.
Yeah, but the whole situation, the whole question around the election, I guess I'll put it that way, is I think one of the most prime examples of what has caused Trump people to be Trump people in the first place. I mean, this enormous sect of people in this country who just get rolled over. They're not listened to. They're not respected. People treat them like they don't exist. And we know that at minimum, he got 74 million people to come out and vote for him, which is enormous. That's huge. But those 74 million people, at minimum, are treated like their concerns don't matter. Right. And I have to say, look, if it was literally the other way around and there were 74 million Biden voters who were outraged and thought the election was fixed, I'd say, let's put their mind at ease. Let's settle this.
That's what happened with Hillary Clinton.
Because I don't want this divide.
Well, and I just want to mention, it's not just that they're told that their concerns don't matter. They are told that they have the most abhorrent, racist, sexist, bigoted concerns you could ever possibly have. They're basically neo-Nazis. They're horrible people who should be excluded from public life if they ever have the audacity to voice any of their actual opinions about anything.
But I guess my point is that this was never this was never worked through. This was never settled at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, even the people on the left who I think in a very sort of elitist and mocking way address the people who have concerns on the right. You know, they say there's no substantial evidence that this happened. This has all been discredited. This has all been discredited. By who?
Yeah.
And when? No, I mean, really, and I don't
By
understand.
people who would never have wanted it to be true.
Why would you not want to validate and verify that you won? That doesn't make any sense to me. Rub it in our faces. Rub it in our faces.
I mean, I just can assume, and I assume fear. They're afraid that if they do the right thing, that they'll end up losing, and then that will be the end of the world.
I don't know about that.
That's a drastic fear-based idea.
I'm wondering where the Arizona audit stuff went. A lot of the stuff that came out, people were like, Tim, why don't you talk about the Arizona stuff? I'm like, we did, like 5 times. Like, we had like multiple guests on who went through the data. We actually sat down with them. And then when the stuff from Arizona comes out, it's the same stuff we already talked about. And I was like, what am I supposed to say to this? And then they disappear. And I'm just like, they were checking for watermarks and stuff. And I was like, guys, people want to believe that the world is something more than it is. I got news for everybody. The world is boring. There is no cabal. You have people like Bill Gates for sure. But I've been to Davos, not for the actual World Economic Forum, but I was in the peripheral events where people were setting up. I've met with powerful politicians and ultra wealthy individuals, and they're clueless half the time. They're just powerful. So when they have a whim, they do something crazy. I don't think that there is beneath the streets of DC, hooded figures are meeting and having these conversations. I know I'm being a little facetious. I don't think that they secretly meet together. I think it's overt. I think they're meeting at Bilderberg. They're meeting at the World Economic Forum. They broadcast what they're saying from the World Economic Forum to the world. When it comes to what happens with Trump, they wrote a news article in Time magazine about what they did. And it was a lot of new voter rules. It was a lot of get out the vote stuff. It was nefarious behind the scenes, big tech billionaires and things like that. And it's all out in the open. It's all known how they did this to Trump to fortify the election.
Yeah, but what's not out in the open or known is what the Dominion servers tallied. It's proprietary, and they did it behind the scenes and then told us what it said, and we just had to take them at face value. If we're going to fortify this election for real, we need some sort of like third gap where our votes are put on a blockchain and they can be observed.
Ian, about Dominion, you're right.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to see you again, man.
We don't know a proprietary voting machine. We don't know what's on it. So I can certainly see if people are upset about that. My response immediately is open source, publicly available code for our voting systems. Like, how could a private company control that? That's insane to me. I'm not saying anything nefarious happened. I just don't know because it's private. Right.
That's interesting you guys just brought this up, because I was actually just about to say it wasn't even for me some of the more I don't know what words to use because I don't want to offend anybody, but kind of more on the fringe theories about what went wrong in the election, the watermarks, and some people really went pretty far with the Dominion stuff, in my opinion. That was never it for me. I wasn't really subscribing to, or that to me was not like the key thing. To me, it was the stuff like governors changing voting laws and manipulating the pandemic, which is not the process you're supposed to go through to change voting laws. It's supposed to go through the legislatures. And then they had things like, well, we're going to extend, people can mail them in, and we're going to accept the mail-in until this date. Well, they were counting ballots that came in 3 days or more after the date. And then a lot of people said they came in, they didn't have signatures. That's not okay. The signatures didn't match or weren't recognized. Well, that's not okay. So my question was only, how many of those ballots did you count that didn't have signatures, or the signatures didn't match, or they came in after the due date, or you know what I mean?
This is the issue for me too, right? We saw a lot of that. I think the universal mail-in voting stuff gives a massive advantage to Democrats. We saw Republicans in Georgia and Pennsylvania basically aligned with the Democrat proposals on change to voter rules. In Pennsylvania, it was Republicans who actually did a deal with Democrats to create universal mail-in voting, despite what the laws actually permitted in the Constitution. And so I think the issue is, those are really great points. I think we need to have an investigation, a conversation around that. The problem is the media will exploit the fringe of the conspiracies to discredit any legitimate questions around what concerns we have in the election.
Well, but another question I have too is, why don't we have a forensic audit of every election? I mean, why does it have to? And why don't we all agree on the rules ahead of time, no matter what happens, and just say after this election is complete, this is the way in which it can be investigated so that both sides feel satisfied.
In 2016, they were claiming that Russians hacked voting machines. Like Seamus brought that up.
Well, so I don't know of any specific media conglomerate that said that was the case, but they were thrilled to be misunderstood as saying that every time they said the phrase Russian election interference or Russian interference.
There are people who genuinely believed it. They were claiming
50% of Democrats polled believed that Russia literally hacked our voting machines.
And they repeatedly said that Trump was illegitimate and all that stuff, and that was all allowed. And they spent tens of millions of dollars investigating this nonsense. Then when Trump comes out and says something like it's a big lie, and I'm like, dude, so was yours. If you want unity in this country, then how about we have the Dominion probe, like the Mueller probe or whatever. But they won't do that. It's a double standard. And this is what's gutting the country and tearing it apart, is that if you have all of these Hillary voters who are freaking out and screaming, they got their probe. It jammed up Trump for 2 years. Then Trump comes out, he's angry, his supporters are all angry, and they say, nah, we're not going to return the favor. Well, that's how you shred this country in half. So let's move on, though, because I want to ask you, considering everything you've been through, do you want to give us a run-through of where you've been, like what's been happening since January 6th, to start from the beginning?
Sure, absolutely. Just starting with January 6th forward?
Well, yeah, like how did you come to, tell us what happened, you know?
Yeah. So after the election in 2020, I'd say somewhere around November 5th or 6th or 7th, in those early days afterwards, I was one of the people who decided to lend my voice. There were a number of conservative influencers who kind of decided to go to swing states around the country and basically throw rallies and, First Amendment protected events to encourage people to basically like keep the energy up and say, hey, we want an audit. We feel like something's wrong. Everybody, millions of people thought something was wrong. And so I went to the state of Michigan, and I lended my voice to 3 rallies when I was there, and then I went to D.C. for a couple. And so I was very much involved in this, what ended up being called the Stop the Steal movement. And on January 6th, I got invited to speak in D.C. at the Capitol. There were graphics that were made for the speakers. I was one of probably 100 people or more who had a graphic that there was supposed to be an event at the Capitol. So it was always my understanding that President Trump was going to speak at the Ellipse, that there would be a march from the Ellipse to the Capitol, and that there was going to be a second event at the Capitol. I was told it was a permitted event, which I believe it was. There was a stage, etc. And so on that day, everything sort of unfolded for me exactly as I was told that it would. President Trump said, now we're all going to march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol, and I'm going to join you there. So I started heading to the Capitol on the D.C. Metro for my speaking engagement. And as I was arriving at my stop, I started getting some text messages on my phone from people who I'm friends with or work colleagues of mine who were at home throughout the country watching on television saying, we're hearing on the news that people are going inside the building. And I didn't know what that meant because I've attended dozens and dozens of right-wing rallies over the years, and that type of thing never happens with conservative people. Conservative people are very, very calm, peaceful. So to hear that, it sounded strange to me. And honestly, the first image that it brought up in my mind was, I thought to myself, when left-wing protesters like Alyssa Milano even and Amy Schumer, for a number of different causes, have gone inside of government buildings, have gone inside the Capitol, and pounded on Congress people's doors or made noise, gotten dragged out. Usually it lasts like 6 seconds and they get pulled out. And the other thing that I thought was that I was envisioning in my mind like maybe a dozen people. When they're saying people are going inside, I thought like, a few people went inside to be like, we want an audit, and they're going to get pulled out and whatever. So as I get to the stop, I get off, and I'm heading toward the Capitol, and I decided to start shooting a video. And again, I've done enough events to know that if you're in a large crowd of people, live streaming is just not even a possibility. So I was like, I'm just going to record this into my camera roll on my phone. And then if I capture anything interesting, I'll cut it down and put it out on social media later. So I'm approaching the Capitol from the east side. This is the east side of the Capitol. This is the west side of the Capitol. This is a very important point to me that I make every time I do an interview, because the conservative media has done a terrible job of covering this story. So most people, even people who are supportive of people who got arrested, don't understand this. When you've seen the footage on the news of windows being smashed and struggles with police officers and flashbangs and things like that, as far as I know, that happened exclusively in the crowd on the west side of the building. People were breaking windows and going inside. So I didn't witness any of that. None of that. And in my video, which everything I'm about to say, you can watch with your own eyes. You don't have to take my word for it. Just my video tells the same story. I started shooting my video about 3 blocks away from the Capitol and just took one long continuous video. As I'm entering the East Side Capitol grounds, what you'll see in my video is that there are 0 police officers. Not a couple, not a dozen, 0 police officers. People are standing all over the grounds calmly. People are walking their dogs. People are carrying their babies. Everyone's calm. Everyone's just chit-chatting. And there are no barricades. There's a very, very large sidewalk on the east side. I mean, large enough that you could drive cars on it. And it's completely open. There's bike rack over on the left in the lawn and bike rack over on the right on the lawn, but the sidewalk is open. This is all in my video. I followed the sidewalk up to the Capitol where there were several thousand people standing around the steps. In my video, you see at the top of the steps a man motioning down to people below, and he's calling out, "They've opened the doors. They're letting us in. We're going inside. We're going inside." I repeated what he said as I'm filming, and then I went to the top of the stairs, and when I got to the top of the stairs, sure enough, both doors were wide open, double doors, large metal double doors of the Capitol wide open. And there's a crowd of several hundred people at the top of the stairs. Nobody's being violent. Nobody's hurting each other or anybody. It was loud. It was a little bit loud, but and there were people standing in front of me. You know, I was about 35 feet away from the open doors, and a lot of people taller than me in front of me, and a lot of people were carrying flags on poles that were hanging down. So what I did was, while my camera's filming this video, I extended my arms fully above my head and pointed them down toward the door so that my camera could capture things that my eyes could not see. And I stood there for about 8 minutes on the east side steps filming as some people were making their way into the east side doors, open doors. And most people were just standing there, either filming or just kind of watching. And after about 8 minutes, a man came outside of the Capitol. He got on a bullhorn. He shouted into the bullhorn, "They've cleared Congress. Everyone's left the building. Clear out, clear out." And at that moment, I immediately turned around. I told the people behind me, they're saying to clear out, go this way, go this way.
Were you in the building?
I never went inside the building. I didn't get within 35 feet of going inside of the building. I mean, there were literally hundreds of people between me and the doors. And the crowd wasn't really moving. It wasn't a stampede. I mean, it was literally just like people kind of shoulder to shoulder, like going like this. And so I left the Capitol grounds and I went back to my hotel room in DC, and I took the video that I had just shot and I uploaded it to Twitter. It was, I think, about 8.5 minutes long. And I don't remember what I said, but I think I said something along the lines of, "This is what I witnessed today at the Capitol." Now, at the same time that was happening, I started to see this energy changing on Twitter, where I was starting to see all these conservative talking heads expressing like, "Oh my God, we're so ashamed of what happened at the Capitol today. We're so embarrassed. Oh, this is just the worst thing that's ever happened." And I thought that what I had witnessed with my own eyes and what I experienced, I thought that was it. I thought that was the Capitol breach. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, it might not have been like our finest moment, but I was like, you know, the doors were open and people were walking in, and I don't know, maybe they shouldn't have gone inside, but I'm thinking this is the most embarrassing thing that people have ever seen. And so I made a few comments, saying things like that I was not going to, to speak against the people at the Capitol like all the other conservative talking heads were. I said these are people that are desperate to be heard. Nobody's listening to them, and basically the comments that I was making made it sound like I was in agreement with whatever had happened at the Capitol. About an hour after I uploaded that video and had made a couple of comments, I turned on my TV. And when I turned on my TV from my hotel room, that's when I started to see images of people smashing windows and struggling with police officers and stuff. And I was really shocked, really, really shocked. And I was just like, what is this? I couldn't even understand what I was watching footage of. And when they were saying this was what happened at the Capitol, I was thinking, wow, okay, something went down today that was very different than what I experienced. And I instantly knew that people were going to associate me with that if they saw my video or they saw my comments, and that no one would be able to distinguish, and understandably, no one would be able to distinguish. I wasn't there. I was here. That was going on here. I was there, So I took the video down. I took all my tweets down for the entire day, even the ones I put on before I went to the Capitol. I was just like, I don't know what happened. I have no clue what happened at the Capitol and how bad it was. So even the comments that I made, at 8 in the morning. I just don't want to be associated with whatever this is in any way, shape, or form. So I deleted the video, took the tweets down, and honest to God believed that was the end of it. And flew home the next day. And people started asking me right away, was I worried? Was I concerned? Because even though my video had only lived on Twitter for like an hour or two, it had already been copied by numerous Twitter trolls. So they were mass reposting my video and tagging the FBI and telling the FBI to come and get me. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse day after day. So it wasn't, going away. It was intensifying. And that was making me a little uncomfortable. And at that point, I thought, well, I'm probably going to get visited. I wouldn't be surprised if they ask me some questions, because this is just getting so. And at this point, they were starting to arrest people, and the story was really picking up, and it was picking up. But still, people were asking me on a daily basis, are you worried? And I was like, no. I was like, well, I didn't do anything. I have nothing to be worried about. And then 2.5 weeks later, on Monday, January 25th, I woke up to a team of FBI agents in tactical gear raiding my home at dawn. They got me out of bed, put me in handcuffs, and presented me with a search warrant to take. A team of agents began taking my computers, my iPad, my phones, hard drives, thumb drives, camera equipment, electronics, while 2 or 3 other agents put me in handcuffs and told me that I was facing multiple felony charges for what I had done at the Capitol on January 6th. And I remember I said, felonies? I said, I didn't even commit any crimes. And the guy said, oh, I saw your video. I saw what you did. And I started going, what the hell did I do? Like, I mean, I literally, like, I just, for a moment, I was just like, did I, like, black out? Like, did I do something, like, egregiously violent and I don't remember it? Or, like, what's going on? So they took me to jail. They put me in a cell where I sat for 2.5 days before, in 23-hour-a-day lockdown, before I finally had the opportunity to see a judge, and the judge ordered my release. When the judge ordered my release, the next morning, I was able to speak with an attorney, and that's when my attorney, who became my attorney, informed me that I was being charged with 2 felonies and a misdemeanor. So the first felony was knowingly occupying restricted grounds. And this word is very important to them in all of these J6 cases. Knowingly. Everyone knowingly was somewhere where they weren't supposed to be, and we chose to do it anyway. And so I guess by standing on the Capitol steps during a protest, I was in a restricted area, and I knowingly was in this restricted area, and they were charging me with a felony for that. And for the record, as far as I know, I am the only person who got charged with a felony for being in the restricted area. Even people who went inside the Capitol were getting misdemeanors for parading in a restricted area or occupying a restricted area, but I got a felony for being on the steps. Then they charged me with a misdemeanor of disorderly conduct with an intent to disrupt a hearing before Congress. And the other charge was a felony of impeding an officer in the line of duty. And I said, what is this? And it was explained to me, in your video that I'm shooting like this, of doors that are 35 feet away from me with hundreds of people between me and my camera, there's a moment where one Capitol police officer comes to the open doors, the door frame, and when he gets there, somebody near him grabs his plastic shield out of his hand. And when that happens, a number of voices, hundreds of people all around me, a couple of voices in the crowd, you hear one shouting, take the shield, and someone else is shouting, take it. Well, the FBI says, you're the person shouting, take the shield. And, you're this influencer with with a big following, and people listen to you, and you have this influence. So by you shouting, take the shield, this is, an egregious act of encouraging a crowd to impede an officer. And so they charged me with a felony. And so that began the process of what was a year-long nightmare of trying to find some sort of resolution in this case.
What ends up happening with the charges?
Long story short, after a year, I took a plea deal. In the plea deal, now you have to understand, too, that in addition to what I was already facing, the DOJ repeatedly messaged to my attorneys and to me that they had not yet charged me with felony obstruction of Congress, and that this was a charge that carried 20 years. They said we could, but we've chosen at this point not to do that yet. So to me, it felt very clear that if I chose not to take the plea deal that they were offering, that I would be facing the 2 felonies that they were already charging me with, and that they were going to add a 3rd felony of obstruction of Congress, which carries 20 years. And when we see the way that the people who are going to trial, when we see the way that they're going, people ask me all the time, do you feel like you made the right choice taking a plea deal? And I say, well, you have to understand, the question was never how do I win and how do I lose? It was how do I lose the least? This was an unwinnable situation. So how do I get out of this and lose the least?
There was one guy who got acquitted on trespassing charges.
That's true. He did. He took a bench trial.
And the judge himself said, didn't know he was trespassing. Case dismissed.
Right. Well, I think, and believe me, that sent me into a depression for a while and questioning again if I had made the right decision. But the key differences in his case and mine is that if I'm correct, I don't think he was facing any felonies. I think he was facing 3 or 4 misdemeanors, and it was a pretty clear-cut case that he had not committed any violence, vandalism, theft, or destruction. Same with me, but that he was accused of going inside, parading in a restricted area, all of these different things, and that he had a video that showed that there was a police officer who motioned him in. And at that point, the judge was like, well, you can't charge him with thinking he's in a restricted area when this police officer motioned him in. I'm being accused of shouting, take the shield,
right,
which I can't disprove that I did.
So, simply put, the violence and all of the chaos from that day, you condemn.
Oh, absolutely. I always have.
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
So how did it work out then with the plea deal you took? What happened?
So in the plea deal, they dropped the felony charges against me. They continued forward with the misdemeanor charge of disorderly conduct with an intent to disrupt Congress. However, as a piece of my plea deal, it included a document that they call the statement of offense. And in the statement of offense, it was a condition that I basically confess to all of the things that they had originally accused me of. So the statement of offense says, I went onto the grounds knowing that the grounds were restricted. When I went onto the grounds, I saw the crowd struggling with police officers, and I encouraged the crowd to struggle with police officers. I saw an officer having his shield ripped away, and I shouted, take it, take it. They changed it from take the shield to take it, take it. To encourage the crowd to take the shield. And I told my attorney, I was like, I cannot sign this. I will not sign this. And so my attorney went back to them and said he opposes this. And they said, well, then he can go to trial if he has a problem with this document. So my option was take the deal as written or go to trial. And I took the deal.
So what?
So either lie or face a very serious.
I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
how did the sentencing go? What happens next? Do you go to the judge?
So I pled guilty to the misdemeanor. My sentence. So they continued my case 5 times over the course of a year, which was devastating and excruciating. By the time we finally got to sentencing, which was almost an entire year, I was arrested on January 25th, and I was sentenced on January 24th of the following year. And now you have to understand, I have no criminal record. This is a Class B misdemeanor charge, which my lawyer said, this is akin to playing your music too loud, a Class B misdemeanor.
Yeah.
And the judge...
Real quick, driving on a suspended license is a Class A.
Okay.
It's a harsher offense. You get to a year in jail for that.
Right. Okay. So Class B misdemeanor, which the judge herself referred to as a petty offense. I mean, it's classified as a petty offense. And I got sentenced to 3 months of house arrest, 3 years of probation, 60 hours of community service, the maximum fine of $5,000. I was ordered to pay $500 restitution to the Capitol, although it was acknowledged that I didn't engage in any violence or vandalism or destruction to the Capitol in any way, shape, or form, and ordered to engage in court-ordered mental health services. So I had to go to a therapist, court-ordered therapist. And the government, the prosecution, actually asked for, during my sentencing, the right to... So I've already been sentenced to 3 years of probation, and the prosecution asked for the right to, as a condition of my 3 years of probation, that they have the right to surveil my phone, my computer, my email accounts, my bank accounts, and my social media accounts for the 3 years that I was on probation, but the judge did not grant them that. But they wanted it. They wanted it.
So we're already doing that.
What? Right. The judge was like, you don't need it. What is probation? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Well, at this point, I'll say that I'm fortunate because I have a good probation officer, and I think I don't want to, she's never said anything to me to indicate how she feels about my case, but based off of the way she interacts with me, I get the indication that she sees the case for what it is and feels like she has better things to do with her time than be managing me on a constant basis.
But what does it mean for you? Like when you wake up, you got to call them, or how
no.
strict is it? You want to go buy groceries? They're like, you can't have milk. You're gaining weight or something like that.
No, I mean,
Look good, by the way.
Thank you. House arrest was like that. I was quite literally not allowed to leave my house for 3 months unless I was doing community service, which was restricted. I mean, it's 60 hours, so I had the option to leave my house for 60 hours to do community service.
They give you an ankle monitor?
I had an ankle monitor during that 3 months, and she would make routine visits to my house, and I did occasionally have to leave and do a urinalysis and things like that. Probation, now that I'm off house arrest, probation has not so far been particularly strict. She's gone above and beyond to make sure that I have the right and ability to travel as needed. She's not trying to restrict me from being able to move around and do the work that I need to do. In fact, the only real inhibitions that I might ever face is coming here to do this show or anywhere else I might need to go. Let's just use as an example the state of California. If I need to travel to the state of California for any business or okay, Texas.
No,
How about
no.
Texas?
Pleasure.
All
You
right,
can say
all
it.
right.
All right. If I need to travel to the state of Texas for any reason, she has to contact the district in Texas that I'm traveling to, their probation office. And then they have to, well, what's the purpose of his travel? What's he doing? Where's he staying? What's his flight number? Is he renting a car? What's the rental car information? So they have to gather all this information, and then they make a determination about if they have any issue with me traveling there or not. So it could technically happen, but so far has not happened yet. And I've traveled to a number of blue districts where so far no one has caused an issue. And in fact, I'll be going to Washington, D.C.
How do you feel
soon.
about the response from independent conservative media, starting with everything that happened? Do you feel that your story was accurately represented?
That would imply that there was any. So, no, it's been terrible. I mean, it's been terrible. I've pushed really, really, really hard to get my story out, and I've gotten to the point where I've been successful. And I was interviewed by Mark Levin on Levin TV. I just sat down with Tucker Carlson 2 weeks ago on Fox Nation. So we sat down for an hour, and that's on Fox Nation. But these have all been the result of me pushing really hard for them to tell my story. Very few people have come to me and been like, this story needs to get out. The people need to know what happened.
I think it's more of like a snowball rolling down a hill, I hadn't heard much about the story at all.
Yeah.
And then we're hearing it now. I'm sure a lot of people are going to hear it, and a lot of people are going to want to know more, and there's probably a bunch of questions we'll have. I think more conversations will happen.
Well, I'm incredibly grateful to you, and thank you for having me on. No, because honestly, as far as the internet goes, this is certainly the biggest exposure that I've had in terms of a podcast. No, I mean that. And I mean, honestly, if there are people out, I mean, look, if you started a podcast yesterday and you have 13, don't reach out to me, but don't. But I mean, for anybody out there who is a podcaster with a significant audience, I'm happy to come on and talk.
We booked you the same as we booked anybody else, like normal. You know what I mean? There was no politics.
No
or anything.
debate. Yeah.
Brandon, no, it was just like, hey,
Right.
Brandon wants to come. I was like, oh, cool.
What would you do different if there was like another, or what advice would you give if people wanted to protest legally at the Capitol and there was something akin to what happened? How would you have done it? How would you do it differently? And how would you advise people to go about that situation and not get into trouble, but still get the point across?
Such a great question. So I think probably the biggest lesson I learned from this was two things. Number one, we do absolutely exist in a two-tiered system of justice. So if you are a conservative, you're under much more scrutiny than perhaps if you support the Black Lives Matter movement, or if you're a member of Antifa or a number of left-wing protesters who do this kind of thing all the time, like Jane Fonda, who stood exactly where I stood, 5 Fridays in a row protesting climate change, and was arrested 5 Fridays in a row and had her charges dropped for all 5 times that she was arrested. So there is a 2-tiered system of justice. So you need to be aware that if trouble breaks out, get the hell out of there as fast as you can, because you can find yourself ensnared in something unwittingly, and they're not going to let you off. I mean, their favorite thing in the world is to put out a headline that says, Trump rioter, ... And you could be a 67-year-old woman with no criminal record. You could be 73 years old. They don't care. It's as long as they get the Trump rioter headline. That's all that's important. The second thing I would say is be really, really aware that there could be a lot more going on than what you're witnessing with your own eyes. I mean, that to me personally is probably the biggest lesson. I didn't stop to consider that this is a 4-sided building with people on all 4 sides, and that there could be something much larger going on any of these sides than what I was witnessing with my own eyes.
It's almost like the jurisdiction's so big it should be quadranted off so that you would only charge people in certain quadrants with activity within that quadrant.
That would be fair.
Like that's like a city block. You don't arrest a guy on the left side of the west side of the city block as what somebody on the east side did.
That would be fair, and that's again to me one of the biggest failures from the conservative media of not even I have made that point to people like Tucker Carlson. I'm brilliant people, Mark Levin, Tucker Carlson. Almost everyone I talk to says, "Wow, I didn't even think of that," and I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, there were. You could be arrested on January 6th for being on Capitol grounds and throwing a gum wrapper on the ground and, get a littering charge, but you're still going to be listed MAGA rioter arrested on January 6th because you happen to be anywhere in the vicinity of that building and got arrested. I mean, I honestly do believe that what happened to me is absurd, but if they had come to me and said, look, you're a big influencer, you've got a large audience, we're charging you with a misdemeanor of disorderly conduct, I would have been like, okay, I mean, if you really feel like you need to do this, fine. But the idea that I was at one point possibly facing 3 felony charges for 8 minutes that I stood outside of the Capitol, holding a camera in my hands, they acknowledged there was never one moment where anyone said, we think you might have been violent. We think you might have been vandalizing. We think you might have been destroying property. They said from the beginning, we know you didn't do any of those things. But we do think that they said that they thought that was my voice. I don't believe that they thought that. But they said that they thought that was my voice. And that was the harshest thing. I mean, that was the biggest thing that I was accused of, was saying the words, take it, take it. And I ended up at one point almost facing 3 felony charges of that because on the other side of the building, crazy things were happening.
They wanted to make an example, I suppose.
Well, that wasn't even a secret. Yeah. In the 30-page sentencing recommendation that they wrote on my misdemeanor charge, wow, they said numerous times, you should read it. Oh, man.
You want to know something funny?
What?
I got charged with I brought up the suspended license thing because I've been charged with a Class A misdemeanor once. You know my penalty was?
What?
It was, I think, a $150 fine. That's it.
Well, good for you.
And they said
my fine's bigger than your fine.
Well, no. My point is the absurdity of what you went through on a Class B disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
So when I was, I think I told the story before. I think I was 19 or 20. I didn't know that if you got 2 speeding tickets, they suspended your license. And I was going to fight one of them because it was bunk. It was a bad ticket. But I was like, it's easier just to pay it. And I asked a family member just to cover it for me instead of having to deal with going to court. I didn't realize that was an admission of guilt. I was like 19. And so then I'm driving back from Colorado. I get pulled over. The cop says, you're under arrest, suspended license. And I was like, what? I was like, I was in Colorado. I just got back. I had no idea. And they were like, tell it to a judge. So I got I bonded. They didn't even arrest me. They take me out of the car. They say, you've been formally arrested. Here's your ticket. Here's your court date. That's it. I went to court. Prosecutor said Class A misdemeanor, 1 year in jail, $2,500 fine, maximum penalty. If you plead guilty, $150. And I was like, okay, so that's it. And it's a longer, the longer story is like, I told the judge I was being coerced because they were threatening me with a year in jail. And then he told me to get a lawyer, talk to a lawyer. Ultimately, I said, I guess I'll plead guilty. And they said, $150, you can pay it right now and you're done. And this is off your record. And I was like, right. Wow, for a Class A misdemeanor.
Tim's like, I could make way more than that in the year that I would be in prison.
Right.
But the reality was,
exactly.
A year in jail was never on the table. No judge or jury would sentence someone to that, right? They always try to scare you with the maximum. But a 30-page sentencing recommendation on a Class B misdemeanor?
Oh, yeah.
Something doesn't add up.
No. And, they went through my social media I was actually going to bring this up earlier when you were talking about people taking your video clip out of context, where you were talking about the weapons and stuff.
Nukes.
I mean, imagine if it wasn't left-wing trolls, but the Department of Justice that's doing that to you, because that's literally in my 30-page sentencing recommendation. And again, people can look this up for themselves. It's all over online. A number of times they went through my tweets and things like that, and they would take words out of different tweets and string a sentence together. Like, I'm not making this up. It's in there. Like, one of the sentences in my sentencing recommendation, because they wanted me in prison, by the way. They wanted prison time for my 8 minutes outside of the Capitol holding a camera. And one of the things that they said was, if you look at Mr. Strzok's Twitter, he tells the patriots that we are in a civil war and that we've got to fight back if we don't want to. I mean, literally, these are all from different tweets. And they strung together a sentence.
Yeah.
The Washington Post, look it up. The Washington Post did a story saying MAGA influencer was calling for a civil war about me. It's a story about me calling for a civil war. I'm like, I was on the steps with my camera, but that's what
They
this
just did
is.
it to Trump.
These are press releases.
You saw what they did with Trump. He retruthed someone who said civil war, and they were like, Trump calls for a civil war.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like,
Right. It was probably me.
Washington Post, it says January 6th influencer. Oh, they changed the title. First, originally said Brandon Strzok, Stuart Rhodes both call for civil war, quote. And then it would go to the website. They change it. Jan 6 influencers call for civil war.
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
They realized.
Here's
No
the news-
defamation now.
Here's the news story. Donald Trump retruthed someone who said the word civil war. That's the story. That's it.
Yeah.
If you didn't say
What you can infer from that is
if you didn't call for civil war, is this a defamation case? The Washington Post claiming you did?
The tweet that I put out that they got that from was me saying, make your peace right now with the fact that we're in a civil war. I said we didn't want it and we didn't call for it, but they've started it, something. Now, I want to even clarify that statement. When we talk about a modern civil war, we're not talking about people grabbing their muskets and going out and going to the battlefield or something. I'm talking about being banned from, like I have been, banned from using PayPal, Venmo, Stripe. I'm not allowed to send funds back and forth. People are literally having their bank accounts shut down. That's what a modern civil war looks like. It looks like when people have a political ideology and they control all the technology and they're preventing people from being able to exist in the digital space. That to me is what a modern civil war looks like.
let's go to one more time.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask you something.
Oh yeah, ask away.
Is that okay? So when I got out of jail, I was having a really hard time, and everyone was advising me, don't open the news, don't Google yourself, and don't open your social media, which I held out for about 2 weeks before it was just like nagging at me. And I was like, what are they saying? What are they saying? So one of the first things that I saw was a piece you did while I was still in jail. And basically in that you were reading through the story of my arrest document and what I was being accused of and things like that. And if I recall correctly, and I think I do, you were basically being objective and kind of neutral and saying like, well, wow, if he did this, then, and I think you were feeling a certain kind of way about it. Do you feel in retrospect like you didn't understand what they were doing with January 6th? Like, did you think it was possible that I would go to the Capitol and try to be like, let's F up some police officers today and let's...
But yeah, I mean, it's like what you said. When you've got video showing all these people doing these things, and then there was a video that you were posting showing you on the Capitol grounds, right? I'm not omniscient.
I know.
I just
and I'm not
assume-
mad at you.
Right. I assume you're up there with everybody yelling these things or whatever. You know what I mean?
You
That's one
thought
of
I
the
got
reasons-
carried away or that...
Yeah, I mean, I thought a lot of it was I've long maintained they opened the doors for people, they fanned people in, the cops were taking selfies with people, and some people were fighting, and we saw everything like Richie McGinnis captured. So I certainly didn't think you ripped your shirt off and were swinging or anything like that, but the idea that you could have been with a crowd of people and you were filming or yelling something, I was like, I mean, it's plausible.
Sure. And I guess to that point, too, this is the reason why I brought this up earlier, and I didn't really clarify this. When I made the comment about not being able to live stream and therefore recording a video to my camera roll, the reason why, in my opinion, that's relevant is I made a conscious decision to go back to my hotel and upload my video to Twitter. I wasn't streaming live and something broke out and I got caught up in the moment. And then I was like, oh, God, I just did that on camera in front of my followers. And I made a decision later to upload my video to Twitter, to my conservative, law and order, pro-police, base on Twitter who would hate seeing me encouraging an attack on a police officer. Now, to be clear, I've already pled guilty to this misdemeanor, and I've already confessed to the accusation against me. I'm just saying, I think a reasonable person should ask themselves, why would I do that? Why would I, even if I got carried away in the moment and decided to jump in with what the audience was doing, make a decision later to show my audience that who would hate it?
We got to go to Super Chats.
I got to ask.
But we got to go. We're 10 minutes behind.
Yeah.
But
I'll ask you after the show.
I will
We're gonna
say
go
one
after
thing.
show.
You know, we often point out the media lies, but I also often point out that we still use a lot of these same sources, and we do our best to try and verify a lot of it. If what I was reading was untrue, and it appears that it was, I am sincerely sorry if I presented any false narrative about what actually happened with you based on my inaccurate assessments.
Well, I do not accept your apology.
Well, that's okay.
So,
all right.
Time to rip the shirts off.
and I'm done with you. Yeah, right.
Fight.
It's a challenge. It is. It's you know, like I said, I'm like reading court documents, and I'm like, wow, you know, like if that's true. I try to be skeptical on a lot of things, but
To be clear, I was never upset with you about it, and I really did feel like you were doing your job. The only part that sucked was being immediately I got out of jail, and the very next morning I saw my attorney, and my attorney said, don't post, don't make a statement, don't say any. He said, I don't care. And that was part of the reason why they said don't read the news and don't open your social media, because he knew I would be reactionary. And he was like, just avoid it because you cannot respond. So when I'm seeing like people like you know, who are just kind of like, wow, if he did this, and I'm going, but I didn't, you know, and yeah.
let's go to Super Chats because we're a little behind, and we got to see a lot of people have questions. If you haven't already, please smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show if you're a big fan. Head over to timcast.com. We're going to have a members-only show coming up at about 11 p.m. Let's read some more. We got here. The One Free Man says, if they were trying to avoid a civil war conflict, someone would be thrown under the bus for this. At this point, they're flaunting they cannot be touched. They know the people are getting pushed to the breaking point. And that's reference to Sussman, I believe. These are the Super Chats from earlier in the show. So, yeah. Reggie, 1971, says, a Russiagate reporter winning a Pulitzer was like Milli Vanilli winning a Grammy. Beautiful. Tom Bamore says, Brandon, pleading was a mistake. People who take it the easy way out are the exact reason why the government thinks that they can get away with behavior like they displayed at Ruby Ridge.
Well, Tom, maybe the FBI will come to your house at some point, and you'll find yourself in the position I was in, and you can show us how it's done.
This is it's tough, man. I don't know how I would respond in a situation like you are in. You know, there's a story I've told about when I was facing like a disorderly conduct charge. This was like they told me it was 20 hours community service at my own discretion, and I demanded a jury trial, and they ultimately dismissed the charge because of it. Very different from the FBI.
January 6th.
Right,
this is
coming
January
after
6th.
you.
I would 100% be found guilty. 100%.
Feds have like what is like a 99% conviction rate.
Wow.
Yeah, not like state level stuff.
Right.
So it's my point ultimately is like it's easy for a lot of people to say, you know, I would go for it. I typically say stuff like this, but I wouldn't know where to begin something like this. When you've got the weight of the federal government,
Yes.
and you see what's going on around this, you see like look at what's going on with Sussman and all this stuff.
Yeah, and they're telling people they're going to add additional charges. They're going to add terrorism enhancements. And you've got polls coming out saying that 67% of potential jurors believe that every January 6th person is guilty. Like, they won't release jurisdiction. All these trials have to happen in D.C. with a D.C. judge and a D.C. jury. No.
I will say, though, knowing the bias, you see what happened with the January 20th Antifa, J20th, the 2017 rioters. The city of D.C. actually paid them.
Why?
The police, because they were all wearing black bloc, couldn't figure out who did what, so they charged them with conspiracy, lost, and then a lawsuit was filed, and the city was forced to pay out millions of dollars.
Whoa.
And they went around smashing windows, starting fires, they torched a limousine. It was nuts. I was there when the police were fighting. There were flashbangs all over the place. I'm pretty sure Luke was there as well.
But it was mostly peaceful fires.
Mostly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually got arrested that day, but I was not processed. I was cut loose when I waved over to a.
When
He's
Kamala
just
paid
bragging
your
at this
bail.
point about all the times he's gotten off.
Congratulations, guys.
Nothing ever sticks to me.
Yeah,
Good for
nothing
you,
sticks.
Tim
You know,
Pool.
I made a call to Bill. I was like, Billy, what's up, Mr. Gates? Yeah, I'm being arrested. You call him? Awesome. And then Epstein was there, and they were like, "You're part of the cabal."
Santa
You're cool."
Claus, I remember
And
it
Santa
all so
Claus.
clearly.
Hillary Clinton gave me a hug, and she's like, "I'm so sorry that happened to you." No, this was I stood next to some journalists and kept my mouth shut. And then when the news organization called it in, I waved to the cop and he's like, "Where's your press pass?" And I showed him. He's like, "Get out of here." So I was in that group of the people who got arrested. And I'd like to say thank you to these Antifa people because I was pepper sprayed and they gave me the milk of magnesia or whatever stuff, Malox.
That's laxative.
So like my neck was sprayed directly and it was burning. And they have Malox. What is that stuff?
That's for heartburn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think
right.
that's it.
But yeah, like
No, that's
milk
what they
of
spray for pepper
magnesia.
spray.
Same thing? Oh, interesting.
Not milk of magnesia.
Yeah, that's
And
a
so
laxative.
they were like, I was like, dude, when you get a direct blast of pepper spray right on your neck, and I'm just like, I can't get it off. And so they sprayed it. Oh, man.
That's that capsaicin.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Pepper, yeah.
All right. Kefka says, Seamus says he will love you forever. Who is you?
It's a good question. So if you go over to freedomtunes.com to the members section and you give $5 a month, it says as one of the tiers, I will love you forever if you give
He
$5 a
follows
month, and it
Shay-
says, and I follow through, I will love you.
That's right.
He's the real deal.
That's right. Thank you, Ian. But that is actually what they're referencing. That was not just in my usual style, a shameless plug. That is what it says in the $5 a month subscription.
Joseph Garcia says
Option.
Trump lost because Tim voted for him.
Oh,
What does that mean?
I don't know. You jinxed it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's real? Jinxing?
Jinxing.
No one I've ever voted for has ever won, so yes.
Philip Reed says, hey, Tim, I used to have some hope that police were good until I saw the body cam footage from the George Floyd riots where the police went around in unmarked vans shooting at people with 40 millimeter rubber bullets and laughing while making jokes. Wow. I don't remember that one. Do you guys remember that one?
Negative.
recall.
That's crazy sound.
Is that real?
Don't know.
What is this? Oh, of course. You don't got to ask.
Well,
Brandon's like, can I promote stuff? I'm like, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
He's
Why
been very
if you wanna
polite.
talk about
Very
anything.
polite. We'll read super chats and then
So
before we
polite.
wrap, we'll do.
Yeah, perfect.
Here's me shamelessly plugging my website.
He's like,
yeah, he's
every
like,
5
hold on a
minutes.
second. That's what
He's like-
reminded me.
He's like,
Yeah.
please, sir, may I
have a
promote
plug."
something?
No.
Jason Lindholm says gas price in Far West Burbs, Aurora, Illinois, and West is $5.55.
Yeah, I just paid
Oh.
$5.50 today on the way back
Holy
from
Wow.
Ohio. It was crazy time. Crazy.
Did it
time.
feel like Joe Biden was while
sucking
you're-
my soul
While,
Yeah.
no,
out of my body is what I felt.
While you're,
Pumping your hair?
here, I'm going to put this in the minds of everybody so you can
Oh,
never escape.
no, I'm
No.
taking my headphones off.
From the
No.
mouths
While
of
you're
babes.
pumping gas every time,
Okay,
as
you
the
don't have to go
pump,
to-
Joe Biden's hands go up on
That's
your
what it feels
shoulders,
like.
No.
and he curls
Yeah.
up behind you,
and
and
just pumping away.
Not that.
That's gross.
and
No.
while you're pumping, you're like,
Let me let go.
I love that.
the gas.
Remember the Kyle Rittenhouse meme where he's holding the gas pump and
Yes.
crying?
And then the gas started dripping down the sidewalk towards my foot. And I was like, oh.
Oh, no.
No,
was
no,
really
no.
gross.
If you've ever seen like a bartender pour like an expensive shot, they have like an eyedropper and they're like very careful. Like they'll make sure the drips go back in because it's expensive. That's what it's like with gas now.
It is.
Yeah,
It's like a
pretty
drop
much.
hits the ground and you're like, no.
I'm always trying to
Gotta
catch it when you
catch
pull it out. You try
Yeah.
to swirl it around so it doesn't drip on the ground.
Yeah. It's no good.
Michael McCord says, couple Tim's sarcastic gas price rant with Ian's stoplight Tesla convo idea. Make the Grey Poupon commercial.
What?
Stoplight Tesla. I got that part. What was the first one that you want to mix together?
My fake rant about gas prices.
That's great, dude.
Satanic Muffin says, bring on malice or expose my phallus. Michael
Wow.
Malice has an open invitation.
Please
Come on the
don't
show
do
whenever he
that.
wants.
Holy
but
crap.
he's got his own show. And so, just yell at him until he comes on the show.
Malice will be back.
He will return in the sequel.
The great malicious return.
Waffle Sensei says, I voted for Biden in the Democratic primaries because I thought Biden was the weakest of all the candidates and easiest for Trump to beat.
Oof.
Obviously, the joke is on me now, but the parties do vote in each other's primaries. Fair point, fair point. Glenn Wellen says, great show, Tim. My guess is the Democrats flipping justice sabotage is actually just them trying to justify the clear Republican advantage in the votes. Right, that's what I was thinking.
Maybe.
I also wonder if people are like, I'm voting Republican because I'm mad at Trump. That explains it. And they're secretly like, I hope Trump wins, I hope the Republicans take this one. Melissa Wood says, GA voter here. I have never voted in a primary until May 24th for Kemp. It's a far more complex issue than Trump. We've had experience with Kemp and Perdue. Trump has more pull with unknown candidates, i.e. J.D. Vance. Interesting. B.I. says, Tim, I love the American flag behind the Irish guy. Do you have a merch store? I'd buy it. The flag is the flag, not the Irish guy.
No, you're not supposed to buy the Irish guy.
Unbelievable.
Not anymore.
I'm also an Irish guy.
Oh,
man.
nice.
We were,
me too.
We're talking about doing.
You are?
Yeah.
We're talking about doing woke commercials for Timcast IRL. And like when we mention our diversity, we point to Seamus as our minority. He's Irish.
Thank you for growing the beard.
Like, I'm a woman, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Neil Williams says, I only became more conservative because of COVID. I don't like fear being the reason for losing our rights. Remember 9/11? Because of fear, we got the Patriot Act. Keep calm and carry on, in my opinion.
I remember it every day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, that Patriot Act, that 9/11, the response to 9/11 was so extreme. Oh, just to live through that, man. Wow. I never want to live through something like that again.
And I was so stupid. I was one of those stupid liberals back then. I was like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care if the government's watching you? Like, how did that?
Break.
Yeah.
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 Moxie Marlinspike. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. He made a really great point. I interviewed him once. I think he created Signal. Was it Signal?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I love that app.
And everybody uses Signal, so this is the guy who made it.
Best
He
app.
he said the simple thing, why the government shouldn't spy on you. He says, we are seeing marijuana legalization across this country, but it was illegal across this country. How did people know they wanted it to be legal? They were doing it. If the government can spy on everything you do, there's never an opportunity for society to reflect and change its mind, because no one can engage with things that are illegal lest you go to jail.
Interesting.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
All right. Mo Ma says, Dr. Carlin stood up for you that whole time. Yeah. All right.
Nice work.
Jeremy Abramson says, hey, Brandon, from a member of the fundamentalist religious right, you have fantastic eyebrows.
Oh.
Well, thank you. There's actually a Twitter account dedicated to my
Oh
eyebrows.
my. That's how
What's
you
the
know
name of that
you've
account?
arrived.
It's Brandon Strock's eyebrows.
That's great.
That's a real
Pamela-
Twitter account.
Pamela White says, Jan 6 congressional hearings will be the tipping point for Midwest Americans, truth be told.
You know, that's a great point, too.
This is a good one. Tom Peeney says, Brandon's story reminds me of the stories in the Gulag Archipelago. They would make people sign ridiculous documents for crimes they didn't even commit and still torture them and send them to the Gulag. Scary. We got Viva Fry in the chat.
Woo!
Is it Fry or is it Frey?
Hello, Fry.
Frey.
I think it's
Frey?
Fry.
I think it's Fry.
Fray hate.
Fry. Viva says it's not just the excessive sentence and fines. Imagine the excessive costs of enforcing these idiotic sanctions. The parole officer, the court costs, state-funded persecution.
Yeah, and time. Time is valuable.
Yeah.
That's right.
Australians versus the agenda says, I got thrown in jail for 3 months in Australia, 5 months parole for organizing a protest. Taken to a super max jail, given 6 charges. Nobody got sanctioned worse. Google Anthony Kaloof. Interesting. All right. Soleil Cucumber Lime says Democrat orthodoxy is based on humiliation. It's a communist propaganda technique. I'm a registered D. Will never vote for these people ever again.
Yes.
Yeah, I won't. There's nothing they could do. And they're like, we need a moderate, Democrat. And they talk about Beto, and I'm like, get out of here with these authoritarian crackpots. Beto O'Rourke was like, heck yeah, we're taking your guns. Or you're taking your AR-15. Now he's like, I don't want to take anything from anybody. Shut up. Duplicitous.
A bunch of kids died. He saw it as an opportunity to grandstand.
Yeah,
Yep.
good for him.
Touchy subject says, Tim is right. There is no pedo cabal, and we will, Hillary Clinton, anybody who says otherwise, just ask Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Jimmy Savile. So let me clarify. Yeah, Epstein was real. Everybody, we know that. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted, but her customers, where are they?
No crime.
And my point was more specifically about the actual political class. I don't know the extent to which Epstein, reached. We know about the plane. We know about the little black book. We know about the people who are going to that island. A lot of questions that need to be answered. Joe Biden literally sniffs kids. Okay.
Yeah, weird.
My point is, guys, we know the Epstein stuff is legit, but as bad as it is, it was literally powerful elites getting on a plane and flying to an island, right? Creepy stuff.
Also, the FBI swarmed the island, and ostensibly there was some evidence there of some people's wrongdoing, and yet no one was charged with anything.
Not OP.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I always make a joke about Luke going to the island,
Yeah.
but Luke's not here, so I was like, I can't really make that joke here.
Darn it, yeah. He
So Luke Rudkowski, after the raid, he went and he filmed and documented parts of the island. So I always tell people, like, Luke's been to Epstein Island. And they go, whoa.
He's like, whoa, not like that.
Not like that, not like that.
Okay.
Oh, man.
A. Murray says, Tim, Armalite needs a rebranding. Also, considering the Fed is likely listening because of Brandon, dangerous criminal, abolish the government, black flag. I love how, like, when you see a black flag on Twitter, you don't know if it's a good black flag or a bad black flag, because the woke authoritarians use a black flag too, because they don't know what anarchy means, I guess.
Yeah, I guess not.
And they just like, but then I periodically see people with black flags and like we're in total agreement, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's one of the good anarchists.
kind of like the LGBT flag too. Quite
Yeah,
honestly,
right.
when I see it, I just automatically assume it's like a lunatic, and then every once in a while they're like, "No, I'm a gay Trump supporter too," and I'm like, "Oh, take the stupid rainbow down.
Yeah,
It's
seriously.
misleading."
I think Christians need to bring the rainbow back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
God,
saw a
Touch
few
it.
rainbows,
Literally
man.
stolen. No, that's true. It was
Christian
Why don't you use it?
to
nationalists.
flood the world. Yeah.
Why don't we put a
Stolen
rainbow
valor.
flag behind you?
You know, I think it might send a different message than I would be intending to send with it. If it was like an
So what?
actual full-fledged rainbow, maybe we do got to take it back.
Was
Yeah.
that a Christian
Maybe that's
thing?
the only
Yes.
option.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I
didn't know that.
And also a Jewish thing, right? The flood, God sent a rainbow to promise he wouldn't flood the world again.
Really?
Yeah.
Take it back.
I saw this
Should.
rainbow
We
when
do
I
have
was
to
driving
take it.
across the country, and then all of a sudden it appeared into a huge rainbow. I saw like a bit of it. I thought it was the whole rainbow, and then all of a sudden I could see the whole rainbow.
Yeah, I can see full circle rainbows sometimes.
All right,
Whoa.
let's read some more.
cool.
The last says Straka did the right thing. DC juries or judges could have given him 20 years for doing nothing but supporting Trump.
Thank you.
I will say too as well, considering what we're seeing with the Clinton Russiagate stuff and how these people walk. These are DC jurors.
Oh, it's all swamp. It's all swamp.
Don't you also have to
And-
hire a DC lawyer? Nick Searcy was talking about that when he was here.
No, my lawyer was not a DC
Okay,
lawyer.
okay.
But I will tell you.
Well, thank you for correcting that then.
Yeah,
I
no
don't
worries.
wanna-
But I will tell you that although they do,
And it's possible that Nick Searcy did not say that. I don't want to put that on him either. I could have misremembered.
there is some sort of certification that you have to be able to
Oh, that's
practice like in that
Yeah.
jurisdiction. And my lawyer, who was a Nebraska lawyer, was certified to do that. The one thing I was going to say really quickly is that almost every lawyer who's making their way through these cases, including mine, who had decades of federal trial experience, they've never seen anything like this. I mean, all of them are coming out of this and being like, what just happened? Because they've never seen a DOJ so weaponized before.
We are in a political civil war.
Yep. Oh, well, you said it, not me.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I say
All the
civil war all the
time.
time, but what I'm saying is, right now when we talk about civil war, when I do at least, I don't want to speak for anybody else, I mean like a broad, big picture of an era of conflict, which will culminate in some kind of dramatic moment. I don't know exactly what will happen. We had Stephen Marsh on the show who wrote the book, The Next Civil War, and he says civil strife, which is the precursor to civil war, when you have, I think, what did he say, 70 people per year dying for political reasons. When I say political civil war, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Democrats, impeachment, all of that stuff, they're using the weight of the legal system, lawfare and law enforcement, to go after their opponents.
It's kind of like they've always been doing it, but there was a curtain up, and
No.
now we pulled the curtain back, and we're getting the residual blast effect of it.
No, bro. I disagree, man. I mean, there was dirty politics for sure. And they probably went to lesser known candidates who had a chance of winning, like Bernie, and been like, don't play with us. We're the establishment. This is different. If Donald Trump wins in 2024, I really think it's going to be like Super Saiyan 3 Goku. The wavy hair is going to extend really long. He's going to rip his shirt off and be super ripped and floating with energy protruding from
Just
his
go nuclear. Yeah.
He's going to fire everybody. He's going to send the DOJ at tons of people. I think the
God, I hope so.
But imagine what they're going to do in response to that. They know that if Donald Trump wins again, that it is lights out. It is the system will be stripped of its power. The establishment will be gutted.
God, that sounds great.
That's why I'm like, look, I was on the Daily Wire last month, and I was like, I think DeSantis would be better at this point than Trump. But I'm also wondering if DeSantis is going to try and play nice. If he's going to be like, I'm going to do what the people want, but I'm not going to do that. Trump's going to be like, I am going to politically strip this system.
Yeah, no,
I just looked at
would be
Seamus.
very
I'm waiting
curious
for him
see
to
it.
take
Tim's
over.
like,
the
quite frankly,
Seemed like an
I
abrupt
thought
stop.
about. I went in there. I said, "You're fired." Okay, that's it. You're gone. No severance package. You're just gone.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder. I do wonder what happens if he does get back into office.
I would like to help provide some resistance for him to knock his head against, metaphorically, to learn, but just think outside the box. Because if it's political infighting, we're done, man. Maybe not done, but it's going to be a lot of conflict if we go at each other politically. But if we create cool technologies and we focus people's energy on it,
Bro.
I think we'll be okay.
I wish it was easy. I wish we could say that if we all just chilled out and worked with each other, it'd all be over. But I think the reality is that if we don't go after the swamp and take out the corruption, then the corruption will reign supreme.
It's weird because it's like the corruption's in my head, and I don't want to smash my head. There's a better way. It's like a detox. We need a detox.
It's not. Look, we're talking about the legacy of revolving door politics. Someone who runs a big company gets a kickback. They retire and then get a job in government. Someone who works at a major pharmaceutical will get a job at the FDA or whatever. Someone at a major agricultural company will get a job at the USDA. And it's just one big circle. Halliburton, Dick Cheney becomes vice president. Then we get new wars. If the swamp isn't drained, and Trump did not drain it, then the corruption reigns supreme. I have a feeling Trump he's like, I'm just imagining him sitting in a dark room, like rocking back and forth, like, the time will come.
I actually just visited a drained swamp when I was back in my hometown. There used to be a swamp, and it would flood the neighboring houses. They ended up planting a bunch of plants that absorb the water and help it now fall down into the earth through this otherwise would have been a swamp.
Let's read a couple more here.
Good story, Ian.
Yeah, let's deal with politics.
Megan Cox says, Brandon, I am sorry that many on the right abandoned you. I didn't.
Thank you, Megan.
Dude, what could we have done? Maybe I'll ask about this later. Let's do some more super chats. I'll ask you maybe on the after show we talk about this.
Spiro Floropoulos says, according to sources say.online, Nancy Pelosi wants to impeach Trump because he farted into a telephone.
That sounds right.
And then he said, "You did it."
You did it.
I got to
Call
check
back to the beginning of the episode.
All right.
So we had this idea. Wikipedia basically can't be sued because Section 230. But the issue is that if someone writes a sentence like, Seamus does a backflip, and it's true, it's fine. But if someone then changes backflip to, punched a dog and Seamus punched a dog, they didn't actually say he did. They only changed a single word.
Interesting.
So my idea was a website where everyone gets to queue up for one word to add to the story. So you open it and it'll say Nancy Pelosi, wants to impeach Trump because he blank, and it's your turn to write a word and you put farted. Then someone else gets to write the next word and puts into, and then someone puts the telephone or whatever. So this guy Spiro made the thing. So anyway, my friends, if you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show, head over to timcast.com. We're going to have a members-only show coming up at 11 p.m. And this one's interesting. I wonder how many feds are going to have to buy a membership to watch the members-only show.
All of them.
Fedcast.
You can.
I think they can just get in, man.
I'm pretty sure they can, yeah.
You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. Follow us on Instagram. We post clips from the show every day. You can follow me at Timcast on Twitter and Instagram. Brandon, do you want to shout anything out?
I really do, actually. So my organization is right now coming back. We got stripped pretty hard this past year. But one of the first live events that we're doing is going to be Saturday, June 11th in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're doing an event with gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake, who I think is an amazing America First, tough as nails, hard on the media, hard on crime, hard on immigration. She's amazing. And so we're doing an event in Scottsdale, Arizona, June 11th, Saturday. And for anybody who's in the Arizona area, they can get tickets by going to walkawaycampaign.com. And you should be able to link right there on the homepage. And really, really, really make the effort, you guys, because this isn't just about like having a fun night, coming out and hearing people speak and stuff. It's really about helping support my organization make its comeback, because we got leveled pretty hard. And so if you believe in a movement of people walking away from the Democratic Party, if you want to see this movement come back in full swing, come out and help support us. Go to walkawaycampaign.com. It's going to be great. And also, I would also love it if people would follow me on Twitter, on Facebook. Somehow, I still have my accounts. Those didn't get taken away. But I'm being throttled really, really hard. I used to have amazing engagement on Twitter, and I'm having a rough time. So go to at Brandon Straka. I have a search ban, so you have to type the whole thing. Brandon, Straka. That's Facebook, Twitter. I'm on Truth. I'm on Getter. I'm on YouTube. Please follow me on everything. And retweet, and share. And tell your friends. Should I keep going?
Tell your friends
Well,
you
let's-
love
Do we have another hour?
What else you got?
Let's skip Seamus and go right to Ian.
I don't
Bye,
have anything to
Seamus.
promote. All right.
I want to shout out freedomtunes.com,
Yes!
where you can
Woo!
sign up for Seamus's.
I got so excited I
Badass
broke my
cartoons.
chair.
You really did.
You,
Wow.
you earned it,
That-
baby.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Seamus, is there? You want to get cute on camera for a second, or anything you got going on?
Yeah, I just want to
So
plug
cute.
this for a second. Look, I'm always cute on camera.
Of course.
No, but Freedom Tunes. If you guys want to go over there, check out the cartoons. We just released something today. We re-edited an old video that happened to work very well with Justin Trudeau. I recommend you guys check that out. It's a funny one. We're going to be releasing one on Thursday. And also, we just launched our website. Now, on this website, you can get access to one cartoon per week that the public does not get. So that then you're getting like 10 Freedom Tunes a month as opposed to the usual 6. And we're also uploading a good amount of behind-the-scenes stuff there. So freedomtunes.com, become a member, support the show, help us get independent from big tech, and thank you so much.
You can get through to me through iancrossland.net if you want to get in touch with any of my socials. Also, I got a book that I wrote about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so now when we were starting Minds. I was one of the co-founders, and I was living on the street for a while, and I documented it. And man, it is a wild ride through my mind. So you can check that out. It's called Writing in the Dark. It's pretty interesting. It's like more of a manuscript or a diary or something, but it's on Amazon. You can get it there. And catch you later.
Very cool. Check out Ian's manifesto if you're so inclined. You guys may follow me on Twitter and minds.com at sourpatchlids, as well as sourpatchlids.me.
We will see you all over at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye, guys.